Okay. Should be live. Is the audio okay? Actually, it seems kind of quiet. Hopefully that's better. Anyways, okay, better send out the community post then. First things first, you know. Here we go. Figure your channel. So here, let me, figure your channel. Yeah, ignore that. I was planning on today being kind of a short stream, so we actually probably won't get to around to doing a lot of stuff. Yeah, I might skip. I've been teasing this freaking Disney adult cringe for like 3 streams, and I still haven't done it. Stream. Anyways, but whatever. Finish setting this. How do we do it? Yeah, I put it like up there. Anyways, though, should be all ready now. Got quite a few stories. Anyone come in yet? Let's see. Nah. I guess not. Well, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Actually, should we start with the PayPal? I'm thinking we could start with, I want to... We might continue the Little Light Saga. Definitely won't watch this whole video. We might watch the first 10 minutes. Anime gave Satan access to my heart. With a title like that, is there any way I could resist? But anyways, though, I'm thinking we could start with this Berserk video. I heard this video was, like, dog shit. I'm not exactly a big Berserk... I've read, like, half the manga. Never touched the anime. I gotta finish the manga sometime. It's actually weird, because I think the first part of Berserk, like, and I mean the backstory, I think the Golden Age arc is what they call it, right? I think that part actually is pretty whatever. I think the story picks up after that. But anyways, let's watch this, and then we'll get around to PayPal and Google. But let's just...
Berserk is a class.
Let's start with this. Should we do one... Okay, we'll just start it.
Along with saying that, I will also say it is the only seinen I've ever read. The difference between your
Only seinen you ever read? Why is this guy making fucking anime videos?
typical shonen published work in a seinen is the fact these stories are targeted towards adult men instead of shonen's teenage boys audience. This allows these stories to target much...
Okay, why the hell is this so quiet? And also, why does he... I don't think NGE is seinen.
Similar, but even more dark and adult themes head on. And when it comes to the medium of manga, this means they can virtually draw and depict whatever they want. Of course, with editorial eyes saying how much they should tone down and such. We'll come back to this later. Back to Berserk. I read this series 2 years ago, and while I wouldn't say the story changed my life, I would say that it can be very introspective and make you ask things about yourself. The type of person you are, what would you do if put in a character's shoes, how can power corrupt even the most positive people, the significance of trauma, religion, and how it can blind people from big issues, and so on and so on. The story is nothing to scoff at, and the art within the story is another beast of itself. But right now, I have to forcefully pull these rose-tinted glasses off and really ask a bigger question. Warning, the rest of this video covers dark and depraved
Okay, that's a little abrupt.
subjects like sexual assault and rape. If you cannot handle these subjects, please, I advise you to click off this video. With that warning, I should rip off the band-aid. Within
Okay, hopefully I don't get flagged for this.
Kentaro Miura's dark and twisted world, he goes to great lengths to show you how evil and twisted this world is, mainly in the form of its grotesque beast, but also the one thing beasts and humans within this world share, which is an intense lust that drives them to rape. There is a lot to unpack here, and this is a very, very intense and sensitive subject within the medium that can only and should only be handled with the most delicate of hands. And I'm here to say that I don't think Kentaro Miura is that pair of hands. Before I get a...
Okay, so is this whole video just complaining about how Berserk has grape in it? So I got banned from Kiwi Farms after laughing at Null's obvious projection over Pragmata. It's so ridiculous, it's not even a bad game. You were right about him. Well, no kidding. The Null thing is just insane. Like, that dude literally had to crash out over fucking Pragmata because he thinks the kid's too sexy. And look, and it's even crazier how he still, you know, has rep. Like, in that Chibi hit piece we covered a while back, how that person's literally trying to say Chibi reviews as a pedo, but somehow Null's a good guy. It's crazy. But yeah, it's crazy.
Form of people saying I'm a tourist or I'm a woke liberal sissy. Let me say, I think the subject matter can have purpose in media. Works of art should reflect the real world we live in. It's what can drive such emotion within a piece for an artist and its subsequent viewer. The massive caveat with this question is what draws the line between realism and dark, twisted desire. There are times in Berserk where I feel like the subject matter is handled in a good fashion. For example, our main character, Guts. Guts is a deeply flawed but relatable character to some. A big part of his character is his unwillingness for intimacy or deeper connection. The reason for this is from his roots as a kid. Of course, having your only father figure hate you, but also the same fact that this father figure sold his child body for the disgusting whims of one of the many men in his army. This is depicted in a deep, dark way. Literal darkness infesting every corner of the page, while the subject in question is in the center, depicted in the violent manner in which the crime truly is. This truly doesn't have the ideal case of intercourse in mind when being illustrated. It gets across the crime in question without being too grotesque visually, and in a narrative sense, it only bolsters the negative feelings we as readers will have towards Gambino and makes us feel for Guts. And this unwillingness to get close to people physically and mentally follows Guts for the rest of the series. So I think it's okay. I think it's a great example.
Kento had been writing Berserk longer than this guy has been alive. Yeah, no kidding. It actually is crazy. Miura did put he really did put so much work into Berserk. You know, it is a shame he won't, be able to finish it, but still. More Than Okay gives light to make essay victims and also has a narrative purpose, like most of the following examples. Bruh.
Example of using an event like this in a story. The next time the subject is used.
Look, I don't know. I feel like he's going to start comparing apples to oranges, because, look. Obviously, Guts' case is going to have, more of a focus because it's an important part of it. Because he's literally the main character, by the way. But anyway.
This is for another character's backstory, and that character is Casca. This is when I truly question Kentaro's motives. It's not just the fact that this is the plot point he chose, but it's also the fact that he shows it. And in detail, showing Casca as a child unwrote. Sorry, this video is a touchy subject, and I don't know what to say.
And when content creators censor such disturbed but needed language, whatever.
To avoid YouTube from striking me down. And it's disturbing enough to see a mangaka illustrate such a thing, especially when compared to Guts. I think you can make an argument for this being for quote-unquote male gaze. And I think the thing
oh my god, bro.
that makes this more negative for me is the fact I know it's just the start. Narratively, I think it still shows how evil this world is, but did another character's backstory have to have the same plot point? It seems to touch the subject a lot already for shock.
Also, it kind of disrespects the guy since he's dead. We'll see how bad it gets. I did not hear good things about this video, which is why I decided to watch it.
Value. And not even in the next chapter, this subject matter is touched on again, when Griffith sells himself to an older noble for money. Now, I'm still trying to give Kentaro the benefit of a doubt. He is building a narrative around people with more power in this world, taking advantage of anyone they see as below.
So I give it full pass. The only thing that can bog this is once again the frequency. Jeez.
But I always just feel as if there's a better way to show.
Actually, I don't know. Doesn't this scene happen? Because the Golden Age arc is really long, right? So isn't this in like volume 6 of the manga? I don't remember, but look, this is a fair amount into the story. So he's sort of framing it like, there's a sexual assault scene like every other. It's so frequent. Not really.
With more power in this world, taking advantage of anyone they see as below them. But I always just feel as if there's a better way to show that than this, especially when Kentaro himself uses it so consistently. But for this, I'll give it the pass because we don't see it, at least. It was only spoken of, and I wish that could be the case if he always uses such sensitive subjects. But also, in a narrative sense, it shows Griffith will give up anything for his army, and even further, his dreams. So in that sense, it's an excellent plot point that I think deserves to exist. It just sucks it gets muddied down by how the subject matter is handled other times. Now, the next time we see this is Casca once again. At this point, it becomes a bit weird. What purpose, other than serving, oh, these guys are evil, does this serve? They were already going to kill her. What's the point to keep going on and on with this subject matter? It gets to a point. It just seems perverted and gross. For the greatly written female character Casca is at this point, it's such a disservice to her, feeling like anytime she's vulnerable, that this plot point is going to come up, especially when Miura always has to depict it like this, framing it as a dojin. The next time this is—
Okay, I think that's a little much, man. Okay, I feel like that one's a self-report. Alright, this guy... Fuck.
Shown is a vital plot point, and that is Griffith finally breaking down at the betrayal of Guts leaving him and taking it out on Charlotte. And this is No way around it. Even though she still loves Griffith, this doesn't mean she wanted it at the time. She says no multiple times. Once again, it's this gray area, where if the subject wasn't touched on so many times, I'd say, yeah, I think this is a great way to show Griffith's heart slowly drifting into darkness. But I can only wish that it was shown another way, because sexual violence against women gets really fatiguing when it's shown this much.
Bro, be beating it to Berserk is crazy. Yo, you just know. Yeah, that's probably what he was doing.
That's not to mention the visuals being the most in-your-face stand ever, being very graphic in nature. This is where I think I should explain why this can be problematic. It is no secret that Japan is not the sanitized
Okay, so this is where it starts getting crazy. I can just tell already.
perfect country weebs think it is. It has a very, very dark history when it comes to rape and child exploitation. With
I think every country, or I think a lot of countries have a dark history of rape and whatnot.
the act banning and condemning the access to see only being set in place in 1999.
That's not actually true. Look, Japan has really weird laws regarding this stuff, but the way they always frame it is because, look, if kind of how it works is that Japan has other laws which kind of blanket ban stuff, and then they later have more specific laws. Like, a good example is the age of consent. People are always like, oh, Japan's age of consent was 13 until 2024. That's not true. Because Japan had a federal age of consent of 13. However, every prefecture had its own individual age of consent. And that ranged from 16 to 18. So Japan was on par with America as far as age of consent goes. And the whole thing with this is that CP was illegal, all right, because it was still counted under, it was still counted as obscene material.
That is way too close when it comes to the present day. That's only 27 years ago. And this is an even bigger discussion when it comes to lolly culture. The reason
Okay, now he's gonna tear into lollies.
this content is bad is because it was meant to replicate that exploitation in the animation medium before it was even banned.
Okay, well that's just gross misrepresentation, but whatever.
You'd have to be an idiot to not see the huge problem it is that people
Let's just ignore the fact Game of Thrones and Euphoria exist, because why not? Yeah, no kidding. Hey, you know, say what you will about Berserk, at least it's all drawn and animated, you know?
still engage with such content. Not to mention
Wait. You're generally a weirdo if you consume such content. Yo, says the guy who's cranking it to Berserk.
Berserk was being published and created before such bans were put in place, showing that this exposure and constant pushing for SA in Miura's story was in an era where rape culture was at an all-time high. And
He literally just used the term grape culture.
you expect me to not see that there's maybe an issue with that persisting in his work when it's
And this is all built on BS anyway. Also, by the way, Miura was well, this is, I guess it's technically debatable, but it's very likely that Miura himself was a lolicon, by the way.
sometimes doesn't have an intent narrative purpose, and even if every time it was shown in a good way with the author having good intentions for a good message, it still perpetuates this constant content of women in violent situations. As an author, you'd also have to be aware of how your content can be viewed, and that's even if you have the best intentions in mind, which I question Miura for. With all of this,
Wait, so he's basically saying, oh, it doesn't matter if Miura, you know, depicted this in a negative way for the sake of the story. It somehow perpetuates a culture of rape pedo culture that Japan had. What the hell?
it gives an awful addition to the rape culture in Japan, but also across the world. Anyway, let's hit a few more examples from the story. Immediately after this, Charlotte's own father sexually assaults her, and this is just awful. I feel like you could do a lot more to show the King of Midland sees his own daughter as his own property, or that he feels as if her purity belongs to him, rather than back-to-back rape scenes with her, especially when she's presumably a minor still. And I feel like that this in a vacuum could be a good, vile scene to show how evil a character is and how disgusting their intentions are. But with the constant slamming of this subject in your face, it just can't allow me to say in good faith that this isn't just the author's disgusting desire shining through. In all this negativity, I do want to highlight this scene with Casca and Guts. I think it is one of the best narrative displays of intercourse in this story. It shows Guts' trauma, Casca's trust and bond she feels with Guts. It's such a beautiful scene that shows how much the characters have grown. It never feels violent. Maybe it is a bit more for the male gaze, but I think it is.
Oh my god. You know, just pack it in, bro, okay? You're not gonna get any pussy by talking about the male gaze on YouTube, alright? Okay? Go watch... Look, Even one of, like, the red pill grifters would be better to watch than whatever the hell you're on right now. Like, come on.
A beautiful scene that parallels Griffith to Guts. Then
Look, okay, I'll shit on Andrew Tate, but he's a lot better than whatever the fuck this is.
it makes me want to take all that praise back when we immediately dip back into shit like this. This intro scene to their next opponent in the way of their mission retrieving Griffith just shows the constant use of this trope when it comes to Miura's writing. Out of all the ways to show the beastly creatures and their wickedness, it always just comes down to violence towards women. And then
I haven't really watched a Red Berserk yet, though. I only through memes. I'm interested in reading it. I mean, look, it is really solid. It's just not quite my thing, even though there are some good moments, but yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. He's mad that the media based on the dark desires of humanity displays the dark desires of humanity. I mean, yeah, that's what he's mad about. I mean, look, that's what Berserk is. It's literally, it's, you know, dark fantasy. And, you know, people commit a lot more crimes besides just sexual crimes. You know, there's murder, you know, there's stealing.
the next chapter, we see him actively pillaging a village and doing the same thing to a woman. This serves no narrative purpose. They just killed and torched down a village. I know they're evil. I know they're wicked. You don't have to throw in sexual assault and rape a woman to bolster that. It's just gross and perpetuates culture. And you might,
you know, does it?
have noticed that I keep including the fact it's women, because that's the truth. You can maybe sell me on the fact that this is a fantasy world, and
this is just realism.
You know, he says it's only against women, but he opens the video talking about how, you know, Guts got raped, how Griffith sold himself to some fucking king for some cash. Bro, the fact that people see sex as worse than murder will never not confuse me. I mean, yeah, right.
Baby, stop crying, liberal.
well, I don't know. If it is realistic, why is it only women? And why is it only...
It's not only women. You already gave 2 examples where it was against males. What the heck, bro? You're embarrassing yourself. And look, it's usually only against women because, you know, it's not like every man is gay or something. Obviously, if an evil army decides to pillage a village, they're not gonna grape the men. Generally speaking, because they're not gay, they're just gonna kill the men, and then they'll grape the women. And then, you know, kill them too or whatever. Not gonna lie, this guy's giving me some Reddit aura. No, it's not just Reddit aura, okay? He's peak Reddit mod. And, yeah, the watermark is funny.
young women or conventionally attractive women. Realism only works when you can show every side of this wicked crime to light.
Conventionally attractive? I mean, it's anime. Everyone in anime is at least decent looking unless you specifically draw them to be ugly.
Not just the part that can be easily fetishized. And the only time it's a man is when it's Guts. And out of all characters,
It was also Griffith, kinda.
he's also the only one to get revenge for such a crime, while women are just violently thrown into such situations and die or are stuck in the cycle of it. And this isn't even to mention the scene that happens with Wild and Casca. It's just fatiguing and serves no narrative purpose. It shows as such when it was literally cut out of the 97 adaptation of the anime. And I'm telling
Okay, so now he's running cover for censorship, which is interesting.
you, nobody batted an eye. Let's wrap this up with the last example. The
You know, I don't know. I know the Berserk anime adaptations are a bit contentious. People don't really like the CG one for sure.
event of the eclipse, with Casca and a person who is no longer Griffith, but Femto. A tragic scene, as it is one of the most devastating things that happens in this manga. Too bad that all of that narrative weight is taken off of it because of Miura's constant, fatiguing sense to always use it as a way to shock you. If Casca was never always put in these situations, it makes the one time it has narrative purpose hit a lot harder. But now, it's muddied for me, because I can only think it's some bizarre fetish Miura snuck into his writing. And that's the point, no matter how much forethought was put into this exact scene.
Wonder if he even knows the difference between narrative and story. Yeah, doubtful.
The weight intended for it to have, with the intended events to follow, none of it matters if you can't treat the subject with the amount of care it desperately needs. And that's not to mention that this event is widely misinterpreted by fans and is the butt of many jokes in the fandom. And also the handling of Casca past the point of this event. With the traumatizing events leaving her mute, her sense is shocked, she is scared, and can't trust anything or anyone. Too bad that it's literally played for goofs and laughs sometimes. It can also come off as this
I'm not trying to be miserable and say she can't be a bit silly, but it can put a poor taste in your mouth when it comes to the tragic character. Okay, bro.
weird male savior complex, with Guts constantly taking care of her. And spoilers, her not even overcoming it
His music choice in the background is very Tourist, like...
by
Is
her
this
own
just
complex,
P5?
with Guts constantly taking care of her. And spoilers, her not even overcoming it
Oh yeah, baby's first anime game.
by her own means and just getting magical fairy powers.
I love Casca so much as a character, and it's great to see her back in any form, but this is just isn't it. It's a good payoff for her after all the characters you've read.
Powers to fix her
Or
trauma.
chapters.
It all just rubs me the wrong way, and also rubs a lot of women in a bad way. How can you blame them? There's
Women? Bro.
also this narrative that Miura regretted the amount of times he added these scenes for shock value, and I was inclined to believe such as, yeah, the more you read Berserk, the less these scenes come as frequent events. But no, he actually never felt guilty for such events, and in fact, phrases as him pushing the limits of his editors. So the
Yo, Miura was giga-based, man.
craziest part in all this, despite Japan's awful culture around child exploitation and rape, is even his own editors were telling him to calm down. Now look, am I trying to cancel a dead man? No. I don't.
I'm sure, bro. Are the women in the same room with us? Who knows? Oh, man.
don't want to believe Miura's complex work that is Berserk is just one big fetish piece, because truthfully, I don't think it is. I think it has great potential for the themes and messages it perpetuates, but it sadly is bogged down by Miura's bad habits and the way he portrays women. I still mildly like Berserk, and I don't
Not even mildly of what? The baggage of also hating certain aspects. This guy would be surprised about the amount of women that are near the primary audience for Redo of Healer. That's true. Majority of that series audience is women, I'm pretty sure. Oh, but you know, he's a good little boy who always listens to what the feminists on Reddit tell him to believe, you know, so.
want any Berserk fan to feel guilty for liking this series, but if you are going to enjoy it, you have to be aware of what you are enjoying, and in the same breath, realize its major faults, as well as realizing Miura isn't a saint, and isn't exactly a good person if he can write and draw women the way
I'm not gonna fully judge the morality of a dead man in another country that I never met. Holy shit, he's totally just shitting on Miura here.
he does, and is not beyond harsh criticism. I sincerely hope this video and its comment section can serve as a great discussion piece, and not just people arguing that their manga isn't for sissy liberals. I sincerely understand the struggle of people labeling something you love as just problematic and not wanting
Oh my god, bro.
to engage with it because of that. Neon Genesis Evangelion and Chainsaw Man gets a lot of these people who don't want to try and understand the significance of the story and its events and just say it gives off a poor message. But in the case of Berserk, this is just far too big to tell off as themes and such, and it highlights a major issue with our modern culture, especially
You know, it actually is weak. He's calling him a bad person in real life for what he animates. Holy shit. Yeah, no kidding. Fuck. Berserk is 40 volumes, by the way. Alright. It's really not as frequent as he's trying to claim.
that of the Japanese. In this world, we don't need fiction perpetuating more violence towards women. It only
Perpetuating violence. You know, you get into, you know...
continuously cradles this festering culture our world has, especially if it's not treated seriously. Thanks for watching.
Obsessed with modern
Hi,
art.
hello there. Thank you for making it.
And he has Fortnite gameplay at the end? Oh my... So basically, Japan is a pedo country. Miura was an evil bad guy because he had too many grape scenes, even though they were depicted negatively. And I guess that's about it. Fuck, what else? Man. Let's see. Let's look at his channel. YouTube, A Difficult Dream. Does this guy... Oh, of course it's a furry! It's always a fucking furry! What the hell? Oh, this guy's like, Lolicon is problematic. If you watch it, you're a weirdo pedo. Meanwhile, you're a fucking furry dog fucker. Holy shit. How come this always happens? How are these people so retarded? Fuck. He makes another one about Berserk. Holy shit. Oh my god. You know, just pack it in, boy. Did this guy... I guess this guy nuked a bunch of videos, because there's no way he has 1,000 subs with 25,000 channel views. That's just impossible. Unless he's botting them or something. But my god. Let's see. He was just too problematic from bygone era. Yep, just straight up disrespectful, and he lies about it too. I'm not bad-mouthing him, but he's a bad person for animating that. But I'm not saying he is a bad person. You know, let's say hypothetically. Oh, actually, no. Alright. Let's say hypothetically, Berserk was just pure fetish content. Alright. That still makes Miura a bad person because it perpetuates grape culture or something. Keep in mind, by the way, even if you believe that, oh, rape is super underreported in Japan or whatever, which, I mean, we could talk about that. I kind of don't believe it fully, but, you know, Japan still has lower rates of sex crimes than, you know, the UK, for example. Where's his video about that? Oh, wait, he'd never make that video because in the UK, it's all done by freaking Indians and Pakistanis. Evergreen. No, you don't get it. The dog is drawn and not a real dog. Furries and Muslims really act like purists when it comes to fiction. Yeah, it's insane. The furry PFP really gave it all. Yeah. What the hell? You know, that's the thing I just don't get. I mean, talk about stones from glass houses. It genuinely confuses me how furries get on their high horse about that. But yeah, anyways, video was pretty shit. Yeah. Miura, bad guy. Japan, pedo country. Alright, lolicons are pedos, but furries aren't zoophiles for some reason. Anyways, though. Whatever, let's get to the real meat. That was the warm-up. They get on that high horse because they got that dog in them. Yeah, they aren't... yeah, no kidding. They don't get on the horse, they get under the horse. Anyway, let's see here. Anyway, so we're gonna start with this, today's news, alright? So, this is the PayPal story. They really think they're the exception every time, yeah. So anyways, here it is. Payment processors are increasingly restricting adult content creators. PayPal has started issuing permanent account limitations to artists who accept payments for lewd or adult-themed commissions, citing policy violations and unusual activity. This follows Stripe's recent move to block lewd projects on Kickstarter. Private companies are enforcing stricter content rules that go beyond legal requirements. Many independent creators are forced to find alternatives like crypto. Yeah, so we've got another payment processor cracking down on adult content. In this case, artists can't even take commissions anymore. I swear, this shit's crazy. And obviously, OnlyFans and digital prostitution is never affected. Yeah, good point. God forbid they pull this shit with OF. Here's one of the artists reporting on it. So I'm finally considering opening comms, and this is what I got. Thanks, PayPal. We're permanently limiting your account. You can no longer use PayPal as we've decided to permanently limit your account after review. No longer offering services. So this is just to accounts who are, you know, accepting commissions for NSFW art. We're getting to the point of just having to use a Discover card under JCB on native Japanese creators at this point. Lol, yeah. Actually, that reminds me, DL Site had to go through a billion hoops to do it. And, you know, if you don't know DL Site, they sell hentai, doujins, and games and stuff. But on DL Site, you can't just buy something with your credit card. You have to go to some other platform, buy points, and then you can use those points on DL Site to buy what you want. It's this massive rigmarole. Anyways, though, any cool comments here? Yeah, so this is from Chibi. What PayPal and other payment processors are doing to fictional content should be illegal. Yeah, no kidding. And yeah, the fact that PayPal is banning people for stuff they do off their site is what should concern everyone. They're actually scanning everything you do to ban you. This meme is actually 100% accurate. I only offer SFW services. PayPal is listening. That's another point of it. Okay? Because this is an issue that a lot of platforms have been having. They will ban you for stuff they do, for stuff you do off of their platform. You know, like this will happen for Patreon, you know, with Patreon, for example. If you, say, have a Discord server where you post other stuff, that can get you banned. And that's the real concerning thing, because, you know, PayPal isn't just... Because, yeah, PayPal actually is, you know, running around like the KGB, scanning your every move to see if you're breaking their rules or not. You know, rules that are oftentimes, you know, ambiguous, by the way. This vid is also being targeted by the censorship freaks that host anime, manga stuff that caters to certain tastes. Interesting. I haven't heard of this vid. But I guess that's... I mean, we've seen it with unpopular people to the extreme being debanked since the business aren't required to service you. That's another problem. I mean, we really do need some legal protections against this stuff. I mean, I doubt that's ever going to happen. But it really should. And look, these people, I mean, look, these companies basically have, like, you know, a blank check to do whatever they want, too. But I don't know. I mean, in the short term, artists will move somewhere else. Like, I guess you could probably do Cash App. The thing is that all these platforms are always banned. Or they often have the same rules. It's like how Patreon or Subscribestar now has the same rules as Patreon. Like, the only real alternative is crypto, and that has a whole host of other problems. Genuinely appreciate the space of crypto offering alternative. Yeah, that's nice at least, but, you know. There's this one, too. So, Fantia, which is, you know, another, you know, image site, a Japanese image site, is also now altering their guidelines. They're requiring stricter censorship. In light of the revision of our guidelines, we deeply apologize for causing you significant burden and for making you feel uncomfortable through our further inconsiderate communication. So after they announced their censorship, or I'm not even sure if there was an official announcement. I think they just changed their TOS. But they always start with, like, we're sorry about how you feel. Or we're sorry that you felt a certain way. So it's like, without fintech or traditional bank, you really don't have any way to send money for services. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. If you get debanked, you're basically unpersoned. You know, you're an invalid. Which is the real scary thing, right? And I wouldn't be surprised if this kind of stuff becomes more common in the future. You know, like, kind of like how China has their social credit system. You know, we could just have our own, except it's all private, which is even worse in some ways. So if you say something, you know, they won't even have to make it so that they won't even have to do it so that you get arrested for saying something racist, for hate speech. They could just have it so that you get 0 social credit score. Now you can't open a bank account or have a credit card or do anything. Wish more people use crypto. Good luck controlling that, yeah. Anyways, as a renewed notice regarding passwords, we will conduct checks sequentially after the revision date. If they do not comply with the guidelines, we will temporarily set them to private on the operational side and send revision requests. Additionally, the update to the translation function was something we had planned. So yeah, basically they're requiring stricter censorship, and they're also expanding their translation services. So they're trying to expand their business outside of Japan, which is also very concerning. And people aren't very happy about this. Man. So this is from Chinese. You guys want to upgrade the translation function to expand overseas affairs. Fine, I'll speak in my language then. You can't even process Visa and MasterCard at all after getting one leg crippled by those Western leftist cocks. Now you're apparently under scrutiny from domestic Japanese agencies, leading to even stricter user agreements that make it so creators can barely protect themselves. Run if you can. Why the hell should I, a foreigner, go out of my way to give you money for incomplete creations? You're not going to be my top option. Man. Hi, Gaijin here. We aren't going to use your service if we feel like we're going to be attacked and censored for uploading to your website. If that's how we feel, how do you think your Japanese users, the core of otaku culture that you cater to, feel about their works being attacked? So yeah, Japan is not taking this well. And combined with, you know, this other stuff, they're really not happy. To protect free creative endeavors and daily life for the long haul, you say, I wonder which mouth is saying that. Man. Anyway, let's see. I wish more people use crypto. Remember, guys, this was to own the chuddies. Yes, famous last words. I need Gaben to make his own bank of Steam. It can't come soon enough. Because, you know, Steam actually is genuinely free speech. They always, but, you know, they get pushed around by payment processors. I'll still shit on Steam for censoring stuff, of course. But, yeah, if Steam actually was able to set up their own payment processor, you know, I'm sure they would take away at least most of their current guidelines. Anyways, here let's see some more. Japanese Twitter is giga-based. It's honestly kind of shocking. It's probably a mistake for pushing it overseas, right? You can see it's getting totally rejected by those overseas folks too. Honestly, it's so embarrassing. I noticed this in the community note, but please spare us the silent fixes. So they're changing around stuff too. The moment you introduce those new guidelines, it was already over. Creators have the freedom to draw whatever they like, yet you took that away from them. A boycott was inevitable, and you got the comeuppance you deserved. Pretty conscientious of them to speak up before any crackdown happens, because if Fontia pushes back or just ignores it with a "we don't know" attitude, the creators and operators could get swept up in the bus too, so they're putting out that statement to avoid that. And they're saying that Fontia will take swift action to dodge the crackdown. Let's see. Are you kidding me? The group you caved to is in bed with North Korea, and they're connected to the Japan Christian Church, the Christian organization that let a high school girl drown off Hanoko and Okinawa, aren't they? You're planning to crush creators just to satisfy the demands of anti-Japan violent terrorist group affiliates? I'll make sure this gets brought up in the diet, you know. Holy shit. Is that real? Yo, that's crazy. Unification Church is the creation of the Juice. It's the same as Freemasons, Skull and Bones, Illuminati, and the Trilateral Committee. What that... Yo, this is a crazy conspiracy. Maybe I'll save this for later and look into it, but my god. You know, Christians, you got some explaining to do. You got some explaining to do. Anyway, this one looks good. Before you even think about increasing overseas users, aren't you spitting in the faces of the domestic artists who've supported you so far? And what the hell are you going to do now? This whole fiasco is already spread like wildfire overseas. Who the fuck's going to willingly use Fontia from here on out? You're going to go back and edit every single piece of art that's been uploaded till now? That's fucking insane. Wherever the hell you got told to do that from, you're treating the artists and users who've been contributed all this time like total trash. It's actually kind of insane. Even suggesting the artists, because... You know, I'm sure there's millions of pieces of art. An individual artist might have thousands of individual pieces. And even then, they might have dozens of variations of certain pieces. So you want some artists to go and censor thousands of pieces individually? I mean, it's shocking. There's some funny takes from some of Japanese Twitter. Yeah, I should have picked through this earlier, but I wasn't even planning on doing a stream today, but I don't know. Not that much has really happened, so I figured I'd just do it today and then take tomorrow off. Just come out and announce when you're getting the pressure from, where you're getting the pressure from already. Why hide it? The police or some regulatory group, organized crime? Which one is it? Apparently it's some fucking Japanese Christian cult or whatever. Let's see here. Let me ask you one more time. Guidance from relevant organizations, industry standards, legal guidance. What are these? You know, there's another reason why people get pissed when censorship happens, because, you know, they never frame it in the right way. I'm assuming there's some kind of unofficial rule or something that these people can't just say outright that, you know, payment processors or the government or whoever is trying to, or the marketplace is forcing them to set up these rules. Because I remember this happened with Blue Archive ages ago. Nexon said they would release the game uncensored internationally, and then it was censored internationally. And of course, it was done to appease the Google Play Store. But, you know, they can never just say that for some reason. It's kind of interesting, because Steam was one of the few who actually said, yeah, we're doing this because payment processors told us to. Anyways, though, we'll stop that for now. Now let's move on to the Google Drive story. This is interesting. So, we'll start with this one, because I think this one broke first. Yeah. So, Nido-Rare manga author has Google account banned after uploading his own manga to Drive. Itosugi Masahiro revealed that his entire Google account was suspended after uploading old manga files to Google Drive. The issue didn't stop at Drive. All connected Google services were blocked at once. He tried to appeal the decision, but Google rejected the review request. Currently, he is publishing the manga The Cuckolding Wizard's Adventure alongside Majikari. Yeah, so this guy's manga was banned. I thought I had it somewhere. Yeah, so here's the original tweet. By the way, I hate to admit this with all the embarrassment it brings, but I got my Google account banned. It happened when I was uploading data from an old comic I drew to Drive, and a warning popped up. Even my appeal for re-review got rejected, and boom, account banned just like that. Seriously, it's a real hassle. I was using that Google account for all sorts of sites and services. This might not affect the goody two-shoes out there, but if you're the type thinking, me, a goody two-shoes? Maybe. Watch yourself, all right? Yeah, and then there's another story. Akisora, adult manga artist Masahiro. Oh, okay, so this is the same one. But anyway, so this is the story. So Google now is going around and banning people. They're scanning Google Drive and banning people who are uploading adult content, it looks like. And I mean, look. And I mean, look, this is also, I mean, look, it's what you should expect. Honestly, if you're uploading this shit to Google Drive, I mean, complete, like, not even encrypted or anything, I feel like that's kind of, that's kind of like touching a hot stove, you know what I mean? You should probably know better. You know, Google isn't some paragon of free speech, and I'll give him a pass. You know, this is a Japanese guy. He doesn't necessarily think it's gonna be, you know, because this is all, you know, maybe it's legally dubious in other places, but in Japan, it's all fine, right? And this is for his own personal use. He wasn't spreading it around everywhere, but, you know, Google, with their AI, is scanning everybody's files. They're banning it. And look, they're banning it without even a chance to repeal if they even detect something. Because keep in mind, you could hypothetically get banned for a false positive, and then your appeal gets rejected, or maybe they don't even allow you to appeal at all. And then you get banned from all kinds of Google services. And that's pretty important these days. You know, Google is the standard for your email. You know, you need it for you need it for all kinds of stuff. You know, Google Play, where it's where you download apps. And I mean, look, depending on how extreme they get, you know, sometimes they'll even ban you for ban evasion. So if you try to make a new account from the same IP, or they figure out you're the same guy, they might even just ban you for that. So this guy potentially could be banned from Google for life. I mean, talk about insane. But yeah, though. And I find this all really concerning, you know, all this censorship, because, you know, you'll hear certain trad cucks, right? Who will go up, you know, trad cucks, conservacucks. You know, they'll parade this around like some kind of brilliant victory, you know? They'll be like, oh, Fontia's censoring stuff. PayPal is shutting down NSFW artists. Giga-based. But the whole thing is that it really isn't, okay? Because the reason they're not doing this, it's not because Google or PayPal suddenly grew a conscience. It's not like they just converted to Christianity or something. You know, they're doing this, in my opinion at least, because they hate men, alright? And they want to shut down these services because allowing men to have any kind of sexual freedom's bad. You'll often see them blame, you know, the male loneliness crisis or the disenfranchised young male epidemic on pornography. You know, and this is, you know, my own theory about this stuff. I've said this before, how I think they're going to restrict or potentially ban, you know, porn because of that. Because, you know, the whole thing is that even in the age of feminism, it's still men producing everything, you know, especially if we're talking the West specifically, it's, you know, white men who are producing everything. However, because the dating market has been completely destroyed by feminism and dating apps, you know, young men, they aren't getting girlfriends. Like 2/3 of young men now are single versus 1/3 of young women. And, you know, also DEI and immigration is shutting them out of the job market, which is another problem that the elites will never actually confront. So because they won't confront the real problems, they'll instead confront pornography, which is just another symptom. All right. And, you know, my opinion is that they'll eventually, you know, make a play to ban this, to ban porn in general, you know, just to sort of attack men. I really wish I could make an account that doesn't require making a Google account. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, look, you need an email from somewhere. Like, even if you want a Proton account, you need to verify your Proton account with another email. So you need a Gmail. I guess you could make a Yahoo account. Maybe they let you do that without a phone number or something. But anyways, yeah, that's my opinion on what's happening here, okay? They're basically just attacking young men. Instead of actually doing something to help young men, all right, they're just trying to take away their one cope to get them back on the plantation instead of solving any real issue. And I mean, look, think about it this way, right? You know, Tinder has probably done 100 times the damage to society than every hentai artist combined, all right? You really think they're ever going to ban Tinder or even just restrict dating apps in some kind of way? Never, ever. But, you know, they'll shut down artists taking commissions on PayPal. You know, they won't shut down OnlyFans, but they'll do that. They'll require everybody to censor all their art on Fontia. They'll shut down manga artists for archiving their old work. Oh, yeah, but, you know, Tinder's fine, OnlyFans is fine, hookup culture's fine. You know, it's the whole thing anarcho-tyranny, right? Just more of that. Anyways, though, there's Chibi's video on it. Probably won't cover this. Does he talk about anything else interesting in here? PayPal thing. Holy shit, no one cares. Conservatives are in lockstep with feminists to screw us over. I mean, exactly. Because that's the whole thing. A lot of these conservatives, Christians, not all of them, of course, but a good chunk of them, especially these more mainstream guys, they don't actually care. All right? They don't actually care about young men or men's issues. All right? Which is why when it comes to this stuff, they team up with the feminists. All right? Like we saw with that Piercing Heaven guy, John Del Al-Raz, you know, whoever. Anyways, it doesn't seem like there's anything else interesting in here. He just talks about what I covered already. Controlled opposition, exactly. Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Ben Shapiro. Yeah, just name one. All right. And this was funny, okay? Mega, of all services, of all companies, Mega decides to use this opportunity to shill themselves. Your files should be yours, not scanned, not interpreted by AI. That's why Mega is built with end-to-end encryption, privacy by design. Holy shit. The thing that's so ironic is that Mega isn't even this hardcore privacy platform. Okay? And I mean, look, I don't use Mega myself. Alright? As far as I know, your private files are encrypted and don't get scanned by AI. But if you ever share files on Mega, it does. Okay? And stuff will get banned if reported. I don't think Mega explicitly banned NSFW content, but there are tons of examples of NSFW files on Mega getting banned. Alright, it's happened plenty of times, I've seen it myself. So them coming out of the woodwork and being like, oh, we're so pro-privacy, and LaFree, no, you're not, bro. Okay, stop with the grift. Total bullshit. Can't download shit without having to use your fucking garbage application that sits idling in the background doing nothing. Go fuck yourself. That's another thing. They try and force you to download their bullshit application. Okay, I don't want to download an app to use your shitty service. Let's see here. I've seen plenty of Mega folders being banned or deleted due to Mega scanning them. You guys scan the files too, don't lie. Yeah, they do. They 100% scan stuff that you share. And if people report something, they oftentimes will ban NSFW stuff that's reported, even if it's perfectly legal. Yeah, bro, you literally delete shared content that isn't legal if it's reported to you. Shut the fuck up, yeah. Best solution isn't cloud services, but external drives at this point for backing everything up. I don't know why people aren't just using external drives. I mean, I understand the convenience, but I mean, in the case of the manga author, if he's just, you know, archiving stuff just for the sake of having it, just get an external drive, bro. I mean, you have to have the money, right? It's not that expensive. But shit. Yeah, the grift is out of control. But I mean, look, definitely unfortunate. And, you know, we'll see how far it goes. I mean, it's impossible to say, right? Bro, at this point, just have an NAS, yeah, no kidding. It's like that for everything, yup. I wonder, I don't know, maybe you could use Proton. Whatever. On the topic of, how about we talk about Anita Sarkeesian on the topic of, you know, feminist censorship. Alright, and then Then maybe we'll do a little of the anime video, and then we'll talk about the political stuff. But anyways, okay, this is a classic Anita Sarkeesian clip, actually. Whatever, should be fine.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic, and you have to point it all out.
Yeah, that's a classic. Keep in mind, by the way, Anita Sarkeesian, she was in the news a little bit ago. I mean, she's a bit of an ancient figure, but, you know, the way she viewed, you know, her media critiques, her media analysis, it was always from this lens, okay? It was sort of like an eternal revolution, you know? She was always looking for what's problematic, even if there literally was nothing, okay? And nothing was good enough, all right? Even if a developer kowtowed to every one of her demands, she would just make up something new. Okay, because she doesn't really have a goal. Her only goal is to perpetuate the feminist revolution. And, you know, one of the reasons why is because she was a grifter who got paid for it. It's weird that I haven't seen a gay character being portrayed being evil. The closest thing I could name is Dio. It used to be a lot more common back in the day. Like, Dune is a good example. Resident Evil Code Veronica had a villain who cross-dressed. I mean, there's other stuff. It's just a lot less common now. But it used to be more I mean, what was it? Ursula from Little Mermaid was based off a drag queen. So, a lot of villains, actually, from, like, Disney movies were kind of, I guess they would call them fops, I think, but kind of gay-coded, you could say. But it's definitely a lot less common now. And if we're talking Japanese media specifically, they just have way less gay characters in general, so you're not really going to see it. Anyways, though, this is another one, okay? So, let's just watch this clip.
There is always resistance to challenging the status quo. There's always resistance and backlash. So I think that maybe I can illustrate this with an example. So I don't debate people. For years,
I don't debate people. Interesting.
These fucking assholes on the internet are like, debate me. Like, I'll pay you 10 grand if you debate me, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just like, no. And the reason I don't is because it is a lot harder. When you're perpetuating the status quo, you can use 2-3 words to get your point across. When you're challenging the status quo, you have to unpack the status quo and then provide a vision for the future and the alternative vision, right? So you are immediately in a losing position.
Okay, I mean, what?
Like, you can't win that. There's no way.
Look, except people win. I mean, look, people can win those kinds of debates all the time. I mean, the reason why the LGBT and feminism took over is because they, you know, were able to win those debates. I would say they won them very dishonestly, but they did manage to win the debates. You know, like, go back to, you know, when they got rid of sodomy laws, for example. You know, they did the argument, oh, whatever happens in someone's own home is no business of the government, right? Of course, their goal was always to go far beyond privacy of their own home, but it's so ironic hearing a feminist say this. I mean, you're forgetting your foremothers. Your great-great-granny did not stand in the picket line with a votes for women sign just so you could be like, I can't win the debate. Bruh.
And so I think for me, all of the work that anybody does that's challenging the status quo to build more progressive, a more progressive, more social justice world is immediately confronted at every turn constantly with that type of resistance. It's a lot of like, how do you phrase things in a way that is accessible to the largest audience possible while retaining the core of what you're trying to say without dumbing down what you're trying to say, right? I loved what Bell Hooks was such a huge inspiration to me when I started, who talked about how she used pop culture in her classroom as a way to engage with students on issues of difference and transformative justice. And that she used accessible language, but she didn't ever reduce the she didn't ever like simplify what she was saying, right? It's not like she had to make her concepts and her theories less intellectual. She just figured out a new way to say it. And I think for me, in the bulk of my work in the past has been
I really, really want them to face the old feminists. The whole thing, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm not going to put words in your mouth, all right? But I mean, if you're implying that, the old feminist would be disappointed, I'm sorry to say they wouldn't. Maybe some of the useful idiots would be very disappointed. But, like, if you go back to a lot of old school feminists, I mean, the kind of ideas they had are prototypes of the ideas they have, of the ideas feminists have now. Like Simone de Beauvoir literally said that, a woman isn't born, or what was she said? She's like, a woman isn't born, one becomes a woman, So, you could dig a lot of this up. Like transgenderism, for example, existed in, 1920s Germany. It's like the whole thing, these ideas didn't just sprout out of nothing, right?
a lot of like, how do I phrase things in a way that I can get the most people to understand or to hear me or to get on board, right? I spent a lot of time thinking about, there's this concept called the spectrum of allies. It's kind of like a half circle. And over here you have your closest, most ardent allies that will always be on board. And over here you have the people that want you to die and hate you and think you're the worst ever. And in the middle you have the people on the fence. And I spent most of my career talking to these people.
What? I find it so ironic because no one actually liked Anita Sarkeesian's original. Look, the thing is that Anita Sarkeesian, this is something, keep in mind, okay? Because Anita Sarkeesian didn't actually win any debates, okay? She just went right to the source, okay? And the whole thing is, the reason she was even able to do this is because she's like, I was fighting the establishment. No, you weren't. You were supported by the establishment. She had the support of the mainstream media, of gaming sites, of even the companies themselves. All right, because this woke DEI stuff has been infested, since before she even hit the scene. So really, she wasn't even a revolutionary at all. Okay, she was just the next step in the elite's plan. I figured they just wanted things like voting, not whatever this is. Look, the useful idiots, yeah. But if you actually look at, the more hardcore feminists, then, like I said, it's not far off from what we see now. I don't know. I could do a deep dive sometime, right? But
right, because they're the people who could go one way or another, and that can create a larger sort of cultural shift, right? As we're talking about building a critical mass. And for them, there's a specific kind of language I would use to talk to them versus talking to people that are already on board, and I can use all the internal lingo and all the academic speak and all that kind of stuff, right? It's the preaching to the choir model. So I don't know, that might have been a tangent, but I think about that a lot in terms of what are the challenges, like, and even in your workplace, right? You think about, like, if you're trying to make change, or like ERGs are trying to do stuff, like, you have to think about how you present your message and how you talk about stuff. And you also have to understand that people,
did she even win? This is the whole thing. Like, she's like, we got to win over people who are in the middle, but you didn't. Like, I mean, Gamergate happened. It's not, look, Chuds didn't exist before Gamergate, really. Like, you had some randos on poll. That was basically it, right? I don't know, I think Poll existed by then, but like, a lot of the chuds who exist now were created through Gamergate, through you. You radicalized a generation of young men against your ideas because you attacked things they liked, because you presented your ideas in a bad way and you implemented them in a bad way. So this is just so ironic. This is the whole thing. She was basically just given a free ride. Okay, because she was supported by the institutions, by the establishment. Now she's out here LARPing like she was fucking fighting a war or something. Fucking bullshit. Always bet on nothing. Yeah, you still see this with the left in general. They have the courts, media, corporations, billionaires, government, and so on, yet they pretend to be the underdog of resistance. It's just insane. It's almost like they have psychosis. Like, keep in mind, go back in time, IGN, GameSpot, they all supported Anita. All of them. All right? The only people who, game companies themselves, the only game developers, the only people who didn't were random guys on YouTube and, 4chan. Okay? The whole reason why Sargon of Akkad became a political commentator, has a career now, is because he made videos on Anita Sarkeesian. I forgot she existed, yeah.
Are going to find you when they're ready. So you're planting seeds, right? Like, you're just like, you know, if you share a little snippet here and there and somebody argues with you and whatever, and they come back 2 years later and they're like, oh, fuck, I know what you were talking about now. This happens to me all the time. I get so many messages from people who are like, well, I was a shitty Gamergator and I'm sorry.
I press X to doubt, seriously.
And I know better now. And I think some of it is age. Like, not that Gamergate was only kids, but it was age. And it's also what we're talking about is this systemic shift that has happened over the last decade that, like, while we've had extremely regressive politics, and an extreme backlash.
You know, they say that, what has Trump actually done against feminism or the LGBT or against, you know, race issues or whatever? You know, this is the whole thing. They always talk like Trump's a fascist. I wish. Okay? Trump won't even deport illegal immigrants. And then you have people like Matt Walsh who come back 10 years later and try to take credit for Gamergate. Fuck, no kidding. This is what I tell them. They had the cultural dominance for nearly 60 years and yet they squandered it. I mean, look, that's the whole thing, you know? Like, I reject wokeness in whatever form it comes, but it's really not that hard to make wokeness palatable. You know, like, I've been playing, you know, I love Blue Archive, and one character I, weirdly enough, really like is Minori, and that's weird because Minori is literally just a communist. Like, she's a communist labor leader, and of course, she is a joke character. But even though she's saying all this bullshit about proletariat revolution and the corrupt capitalist class, I mean, it's still funny. It's funny because, you know, she's actually endearing, so it's funny, you know what I mean? And one of the reasons why is because they actually made her an endearing, cute girl instead of some ugly land whale. So, you know, the whole thing, you know, you could have, you know, some very toxic leftist ideals in your game, for example. If you have, say, attractive characters, then it becomes a lot easier for normies to swallow, you know? And, you know, you can see some examples of that. Like, you know, I would bring up, like, certain, or even just making it more subtle or nuanced really helps too, but these people are just, you know, completely talentless, so they can't do that.
The progress, we have seen a progressive shift. Like, let me tell you, in the middle of 2020, when like the big Black Lives Matter protests were erupting, hearing mainstream people say the word white supremacy was a fucking shock.
Was it? What was it? Fuck. I feel like she's living
because
in a
as
bubble.
like activists, we were using the word all the time, but we would not use it in like mixed company because people didn't understand that white supremacy wasn't just like Nazi.
Okay, I'm gonna fucking look up one of her old feminist frequency videos and see if she was actually trying to appeal to the fucking normies.
Right? And the fact that that is now mainstream and we're saying that word.
Because, look, she would, you know, say all kinds of feminist bullshit in the whole reason why people shout on feminist frequency so much, like the tropes versus women in video games, is because she said all this psycho-feminist shit.
And we're like, we're talking about capitalism? Like, it's not just the air we breathe. It is a system that could change potentially. Like, this shift is happening, right? And so remember, you're planting seeds, right? And even if
Well, the woke usually just hijack an already existing character like Henry from Kingdom Come, making their political propaganda abrupt and in your face, not real characters they built. I mean, that's another part of it, too. Yeah.
you get frustrated, and even if you're like, oh, why don't you, like, whatever, there is an opportunity for them over time to come around and to see, you know, and be exposed to different ideas.
There's probably like 2 people who came around anyways, though. Fuck. But jeez, I was gonna look at Monzier Z, but actually I'm curious now. Okay, tropes versus women in video games. Let's look at part 1. Let's see how she opens it. By the way, okay, instead of talking about something maybe more accessible, like going for some low-hanging fruit, her first episode is talking about how the damsel in distress trope is sexist and misogynistic. All right. Holy shit. I don't want to answer your question. Okay, so let's see. end abuse in the games industry, bro.
Welcome to our multi-part video series exploring the roles and representations of women in video games. This project will examine the tropes, plot devices, and patterns most commonly associated with women in gaming from a systemic, big-picture perspective.
Systemic. So already throwing out the buzzwords in the first 40 seconds.
This series will include critical analysis of many beloved games and characters, but remember that it's both possible, and even necessary, to simultaneously enjoy media while also being critical of its more problematic or pernicious aspects. So, without further ado, let's jump right into The Damsel in Distress.
The intro is kind of fire, though. Can't lie. Honestly, man, this is making me kind of nostalgic. This is ground zero.
Let's start with
Like, man.
the story of a game that no one ever got to play. Back in 1999, game developer Rare was hard at work on a new original title for the Nintendo 64
So she already fuck, this is coming back. This is already retarded, but...
called Dinosaur Planet. The game was to star a 16-year-old hero named Crystal as one of two playable protagonists. She was tasked with traveling through time, fighting prehistoric monsters with her magical staff, and saving the world. She was strong, she was capable, and she was heroic.
And who might you be, animal girl?
My name is Crystal.
Pretty cool, right? Well, it would have been, except the game never got released. As development on the project neared completion, legendary game designer Shigeru Miyamoto joked about how he thought it should be the third installment in his Star Fox franchise instead. Over the next 2 years, he and Nintendo did just that. They rewrote and redesigned the game and released it as Star Fox Adventures for the GameCube in 2002. In this revamped version, the would-be protagonist Crystal has been transformed.
Look, one thing I want to mention first off is that, I don't know, there's some conspiracy theories about this. Nintendo, by the time of the rebrand, they were already looking to sell Rare. So it's very likely that Nintendo intentionally made Rare turn the game into Star Fox Adventure just so they could lock down a release for the GameCube and keep it on their own hardware. If you get what I'm saying. So effectively, the whole change, but the whole pivot and direction was all done over, office business politics.
Formed into a damsel in distress and spends the vast majority of the game trapped inside a crystal prison, waiting to be rescued by the new hero Fox McCloud. The in-game action sequences that were originally built for Crystal were converted to feature Fox instead. Crystal is given a skimpier, more sexualized outfit.
Wow, she's beautiful. What am I doing?
And yes, that is cheesy saxophone music playing to make sure it's crystal clear that she is now an object of desire, even while in suspended animation. To add insult to injury,
Object of desire. Keep in mind, men in general, you're not allowed to find a woman sexy ever because that's sexist.
Fox is now using her magical staff to fight his way through the game to save her. The tale of how Crystal went from protagonist of her own epic adventure to the passive victim in someone else's game illustrates how the damsel in distress trope disempowers female characters and robs them of the chance to be heroes in their own right. The term damsel in distress is a translation of the French demoiselle en détresse. Demoiselle simply means young lady, while détresse means roughly anxiety or despair caused by a sense of abandonment, helplessness, or danger. As a trope, the damsel in distress is a plot device in which a female character is placed in a perilous situation from which she cannot escape on her own and must be rescued by a male character.
Fun fact, this happens a lot, and this happens very often in real life.
Usually providing the core incentive or motivation for the protagonist's quest. In video games, this is most often accomplished via kidnapping, but it can also take the form of petrification or demon possession, for example. Traditionally, the woman in distress is a family member or love interest of the hero. Princesses, wives, girlfriends, and sisters are all commonly used to fill the role. Of course, the damsel in distress predates the
It's funny how she has a cut every 5 seconds. She can't even go that long in one take.
invention of video games by several thousand years. The trope can be traced back to ancient Greek mythology with the tale of Perseus. According
Several thousand years.
to the myth, Andromeda is about to be devoured by a
Keep in mind, all of history, misogynistic, sexist, we have to erase all of it and replace it.
sea monster after being chained naked to a rock as human sacrifice. Perseus slays the beast, rescues the princess, and then claims her as his wife. In the Middle Ages, the damsel in distress was a common feature in many medieval songs,
Holy
legends, and fairy
shit.
tales. The saving of a defenseless woman
How
was
long she's talk about this? Whatever, this shit's getting kind of boring. She talked about Peach for 4 minutes. or 3 minutes. Talks about common misconceptions. I gotta hit the... And comments are turned off, by the way. Whatever. We'll just move on. I don't really care enough to fucking go through this whole thing. Anyways, what time... Okay, we're at an hour. Yeah, we'll do the political stuff. This video's 10 minutes, and then I want to do the, what if alt hist video. Or I want to watch maybe some of it. And then we'll see, but whatever. Let's look at this one. Shit. All these ads, man. Oh my god, I hate how they'd have these... Man, these double ads are the worst.
To stop.
Anyways, thanks. Now, I'm watching this video specifically because there's one really bad take. At least I believe. I haven't watched it, but we'll see.
Stop trying to save America. Because the truth is, it doesn't need saving. The US is not collapsing. America is not heading toward a second civil war. The country, after 250 years, is not too far gone.
Okay, all very debatable. Look, I'll say this much. You know, one thing I don't like a lot... Look, the thing about a lot of these content creators... Man, we'll talk about this later. But keep in mind, this guy has 280,000 subscribers. Okay, fucking security verification. Fuck. I'm on 0 to Z. And he has 192 members. So, whatever. I'll just round up. Bare minimum, he's getting $1,000 a month from Patreon. You know, very likely 2, 3, maybe even 4,000. Plus, he's getting his YouTube money. All right. And I bring this up because... Oh, he has an X too, so he's probably getting money from there. I bring this up because being a content creator is a very cushy job. All right. And I mean very cushy. So the reason why certain people like this guy might, you know, say, oh, America doesn't need a civil war, or America doesn't have a, or America won't have a civil war, or, you know, or even like, oh, the economy's not that bad, America's not collapsing. It's because they actually benefit from the system. You know, they're not out here doing 10 job applications a week and still being unemployed for frickin' years. You know, they're not out here. You know, they don't, I mean, I guess they do have to deal with the diversity and the crime, but, you know, their money does help for sure. Okay. You know, Nick Fuentes in my way is similar, but, you know, let's talk about that more later, though.
Need you. Just not in the way you think. I was raised in a United States.
Wants to perpetuate this environment for his benefit. Yeah, exactly. You know, he benefits from the system in place.
That I was persistently told from every side and every angle was under attack. The terrorists, the big government globalists, the corrupt and abusive law enforcement system, the powers of Wall Street. I'm a New Yorker. My family was impacted by 9/11, and I watched on the front lines the effects of globalism on my city. And I've lived through I don't even know how many protests through these streets over police violence or corruption. And it would take me less than an hour on a yellow line to get from my home to the front steps of the Wall Street Stock Exchange. Between then and now, the terror and violence has not stopped. Globalist policy continues unhindered. I have personally watched as police turn a blind eye to crime while punishing the innocent, and the wealthiest elites of this country continue to grow richer and more powerful.
So he brings us all up and America's not collapsing, everything's all hunky-dory? Okay.
It was a scary world to grow up in, scarier more so when you're so close to it, and clearly for many of us that fear is not abated. Like many young Americans then and now, I was staring down doomsday for the country. It felt like America was falling to pieces, and we would give anything for someone who could step in to fix it. 10 plus years later, and many feel we haven't moved the needle very much. Why then should we not try to save America? If the rule you followed brought you to this, of what use was the rule? Frustration with politics is natural, healthy even. It's the pinch of pain that tells you this is not working anymore. It's time to change your approach. When you pair frustration with fear, your political decision-making is crippled, as fear does with all decision-making. You get told every election is the most vital election in American history, that every member of the opposition is an existential threat to our future. You get told that if the spokesmen for the red team or the blue team don't win this year, then America is lost forever, over and over and over again. When you buy into that, you cease to be a voice of change, of reform, of pursuit for your own daily interests, and you become a pawn in the army of the political establishment in a
Yeah, no shit. I don't know. I feel like he's sort of he's gonna direct his criticisms at some of the wrong people.
forever war of saving America, which amounts to few if any changes you actually signed up for. It is easy to be a pawn. It is easy to be swept up in the political wars that erupt every election cycle. Again, what is hard but infinitely more valuable is to
The whole thing is actually saying that there should be a collapse or there should be a civil war is going completely against the Democrat-Republican dichotomy. You know, because you're effectively saying that, yeah, this system is finished. America actually can't be saved. So this is sort of what I mean. He's not actually talking about the right thing.
Sustain the burn of ideological reform, not of partisan rhetoric. To those of you who have followed along with our videos the last few turbulent months, think back to what we have learned. America goes through cycles, periods of ideological power struggle between the old establishment and a new ascendant force. During those times we face mass political polarization, violence, demonization, political and economic upheaval. However, it should not be misconstrued for apocalyptic warning. With the Cold War over, young Americans are once again told to buy in. It's time to work toward global unity, freedom, and democracy across the planet. Participate in nation building. Give financial aid to the third world. But what about us? The America that Gen Z was introduced to was one that was so preoccupied with the responsibilities and duties of empire that it neglected its own people in the process.
Yeah. To the point where the country may be collapsing. Kind of like what happened to the Roman Empire.
Nearly 50% of the annual budget is going directly toward the oldest generations. These policy ambitions are practically identical, or at the very least complementary, like puzzle pieces which naturally fit into each other. Where one vision is lacking, the other one fills those gaps. This could be done by an America First Republican, or it could be done by a progressive Democrat.
Now this is the part that gets kind of wacky.
You are not in power yet. The people who can argue on behalf of the struggles we have all been born into are a drop in the bucket. Meanwhile, the people perpetuating those struggles, because they believe it is utopian, maintain majority or plurality control in both houses, not to mention in the other branches. They are desperate to push through the last pieces of their agenda because their control is slipping. Any young American, any American in general, needs to know, not think, but know that they cannot save America any more than you can save a forest from a thunderstorm. The world is turbulent, but the world is resilient. It will endure and likely survive beyond all of our lifetimes regardless of anything we do.
I don't know, man. That's...
Fears and fantasies of collapse do nothing but distract us from the reality of our less than satisfactory circumstances. Like the man who is poor, but convinces himself that it doesn't matter, because any day now the economy will collapse, and everyone will be poor with him. The real question is not how do we save America, it's how do we make America work for us in our lifetimes. 3 generations of Americans kept under the thumb of apocalyptic geriatric establishment politics, and we think the problem is those same folks of our generation who struggle to buy their first house just like us, whose jobs have been swept up by foreign labor just like ours, who are looked at by the geriatric and moneyed elite as disposable economic or military units for whatever their global ambitions might be. If you are clinging to an idealized America of the past, it is now time to let that go. You cannot recreate that any more than you can return to your idealized nostalgic childhood. If the United States is to be made to work for us, for our generation and our progeny, that can only be achieved by looking forward to what America can be, not grasping at the last shreds of what it was until we become bitter and powerless old men, afraid of a changing world that even in youth we were too afraid to change for our interests. Stop thinking like a martyr.
Yo, puts in the shill links.
Start thinking like a builder. There's no switch that we can just flip, wash our hands of, and tell ourselves we did a good job until the end of time. A better country is a lifelong commitment.
Look, he says all this, but you don't really have avenues to do that. This is what I mean when I say, you know, he has a very cushy position being a fairly big YouTuber. Okay, he doesn't actually have to hit the coal mines. Because it sounds, look, and I'll agree, you know, the only real way, you know, you can be happy and successful in this society is to make your own way and effectively kind of live outside of the system itself. You know, that's starting your own business, you know, moving out to, say, you know, maybe leaving the country entirely, or at least going to maybe a more rural area. That's sort of what you have to do. However, it's really not that easy. You know, making your own business that's profitable, that's really difficult. You know, and a lot of people don't really have, you know, you could say a lot of people don't even have the expertise for that. You know, if we're talking dating, I mean, dating is just completely cooked, okay? All right, there's no fucking cheat code to get a decent wife, okay? That just doesn't happen. Anyway, this is unrelated, but I'm the only one who's getting tired of the constant Epstein jokes, and I was always side-eyeing to the virtue signalers and normies when they joke about it. I don't know. I mean, I get... Look, the Epstein thing's another one, all right? The whole Epstein thing is that it just shows how deep the corruption is, okay? Because keep in mind, I mean, they're still covering for Epstein. We're never going to get to the truth about it. Nobody who was involved with Epstein is ever going to go to jail, all right? And you think that's a system that we can actually salvage? Are you kidding me?
It is a constant struggle, and the majority of my generation, Generation Z, has barely even dipped their feet into political office. At this point, we're all just spectators while the other generations take the lead in deciding.
IMO to test what they can get away with. I mean, look, they can basically get away with anything at this point. Well, I mean, look, it's the whole thing. I mean, look, the only way the Epstein situation could be rectified if the legal system and politicians won't is if you add more vigilantes like Luigi Mangione or whoever. All right? That's basically it. And, you know, we are seeing more of those people pop up all the time.
The outcomes of our lives. How much longer are we supposed to sit on the sidelines? How long do you want to relegate yourself to being the towel boy of American politics?
I mean, look, he says all that shit, but you can't just break into politics or really any business, you know? Because, you know, boomers still run everything. And I mean, he shat on boomers, but this is sort of like anti-advice, you know what I mean? Like, I remember, like, you know, it's like telling someone, you got to get a good job. It's like, okay, much easier said than done.
Throw your hat in the ring. Be the man in the arena. Cease to look across the aisle at your fellow Zoomer and see them as a member of this party or that. See them as your fellow brothers shackled down by debt, with scant hopes of buying a house, with distant dreams of starting a family. Just like you, they are in opposition to dying on foreign soil for the perverse ambitions of men over twice your age. No one wants to live in an unsafe community. No one wants to live a life of atomized isolation. No one wants to be a wage slave for the rest of their lives. Where we disagree, where our cultures diverge, so be it. We can build and live in distinct communities that reflect our unique values and customs. That is as American as apple pie.
And then he brings in, I don't know, Monsieur Z has this goofy ideology of Utahism. I'm not going to talk about it, but like in the context of America, it's kind of dumb, but... And look, maybe it'd be better if it did get implemented. But anyway, this is the dumb part, because he's all like, we need Gen Z, we need liberal and conservative Gen Zs to come together and start a populist movement to take over the country from the boomers. And it's like, I've heard this idea posited from, you know, various people, like Nick Fuentes is a good example. Freedom of association is illegal. What is he talking about? You know, that's another thing. You can't just have, like, let's say you wanted to have, you know, white America and Hispanic America, Black America, Asian America. You can't do that. It's literally against the law. And do you really think the liberal Gen Z are going to want to get rid of the Civil Rights Act or whatever? That shit would just never fucking happen. And this is where this whole idea of an alliance between, you know, Gen Z leftists and Gen Z conservatives completely falls apart because they have completely contradictory visions for America. Just look at immigration, okay? Leftists aren't even willing to accept... Look, leftists aren't even willing to concede on illegal immigration. Do you really think they'd be willing to accept, you know, an immigration moratorium? Certainly not remigration. You know, they won't even, you know, agree with the kind of civic nationalist perspective that someone like Trump has. And, you know... That's just a very fundamental, irreconcilable difference. You know, they aren't even willing to accept that America can have, like, a single unifying culture, you know? Or even that, you know, America is inherently good or something. Yeah, pretty much varied values and ethics as well. I mean, look at LGBT too. Like, you know, just look at a lot of these, you know, these aren't even, it's not even, like, small things. These are major issues. So, I mean, look, like I said, and even, you know, it just... And, I mean, keep in mind, a lot of leftists, you know, they see even moderate conservatives as fascists. You know, moderate conservatives like Charlie Kirk, for example, all right, they sure as hell are gonna want to look. They sure as hell want fucking Chud McGee fucking dead if they celebrated when Charlie Kirk got shot. You know, so this is the whole thing, you know, because I think Gen Z, right wing, far right, whatever, dissident right, have conceded on a lot of liberal points, you know, particularly economic stuff, but it's, you know, leftists absolutely not. Anyway, illegal loses all meaning when you don't want to enforce legality. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, nobody has any freedom. It's forced association. You can't just make your own community without some black market operation. I mean, that's the whole thing. And look, and that's the whole thing. Like, I would say a country needs a kind of unifying ideology, even if it is democratic. I mean, like, is he suggesting that there's like, okay, let's say Texas is the right-wing homeland and then California is the left-wing homeland? Are you telling me we're gonna have a country that's like a white ethno state where gay marriage is illegal, where abortion is illegal, all right, with that super nationalist, and then we're gonna have California where it's just the exact opposite, and then they're gonna go into the same, you know, the same Congress, and just everything's all I mean, it's craziness, you know? Because at that point, you're talking about making separate countries within one country. And you can kind of have that to a small extent, but having them be equal partners, it would just never, ever happen. It's insane. The horseshoe thing is annoying. Say that all you want, but at the end of the day, I'm still right. I mean, look, you can say, look, at this point, the crux of the issue is that the left and the right just have fundamentally different visions for America, and those visions can't coexist. It's impossible.
That is what we have always done. But on those matters upon which we agree, those matters which affect each of us so deeply on a daily...
Yeah, it needs to be an independent structure, yeah. Because, I mean, look, I'll say this, on certain economic issues, yeah, the left and the right of Gen Z do agree. I've even thought about making a video about this myself, but in no way is that going to lead to some kind of lasting alliance, okay? Even just suggesting it is ridiculous.
...daily basis. What choice do we have but to come together and finally put them to rest? You may think, never would I work with a Democrat. Never would I work with a Republican. Already within our parties do we engage with people so distant from us in culture and values. Those parties are not monoliths. And as for the generations, how much do you, in your teens or 20s, have in common with someone who grew up in 1950 or 60? What different worlds you were born into? What different outlooks you have? Yet somehow...
Yeah, I'm sure Antifa will work with you and not stab you in the back. Look, the most you'd ever get is sort of a temporary ceasefire. But yeah, as soon as, you know, that's over with, then it's just going to go right back to it.
The party which you are free to change with the signing of a piece of paper, that is our bridge too far? Are we really supposed to keep fighting a culture war that has been ongoing for 30 years?
And, you know, I don't know. This is just another goof. I was talking to, like, you know, two different audiences, right? Because a lot of the Gen Z right doesn't even support the political establishment anymore. And Gen Z left too, I'm sure. So, I mean, you know, it's just like, man. It'd be like if he went up to, like, someone who quit smoking and was like, you gotta quit smoking, it's so bad for you. It's like, yeah, bro, I know. I already quit smoking.
A war that we were born into, and frankly distracts us from the issues actually affecting our lives. I have watched Republicans in one breath champion Elon Musk's Doge program, then moan in agony at the government efficiency initiative of Zoran Mamdani, and vice versa for the Democrats. I can recall Democrats praising protectionist policy as recently as Biden's CHIPS Act and the Buy American policies, then decrying domestic production and energy independence when touted by the Trump admin. I have heard in one breath the same Republican influencer praise how the Republican Party became the party of the working class, and then in his next breath denounce, quote, working class policy as socialistic when it came from the mouth of a progressive Democrat.
How old was this guy, let me ask?
How schizophrenic are our party politics? How insecure of themselves? How partisan that as soon as the other side adopts our policy, or a policy we have called for, that we must suddenly throw that under the bus, that we must pretend that we never supported that we must work to undermine it even, and we pay the price.
Oh, wow, breaking news. Boomer red team versus blue team politics is bullshit and counterproductive. I would have never... You're telling me this for the first time? Bro.
To the benefit
Like, this is the whole thing. Yeah, Gen Z has broken the cycle on this. That doesn't mean that that still doesn't mean that there aren't divisions, you know?
Of the parties. You are not your political party. You are not your congressman. You are disillusioned, down on your luck, and unrepresented. So why not change all that? Stop parroting what the parties want to hear, and start telling them what they need to hear. Stop voting for your congressman if you hate his policy but are scared of the other guy. And run for office yourself. Will you win? Probably not, but you'll send a damn strong message. Gen Z is here. We're almost 20% of the voting age population and growing. And we're all tired of the boomer nonsense.
You know, keep in mind, Gen Z is minority white. So if you do want to, say, shut down immigration or whatever, or even, you know, do remigration, you really think a minority white voting demographic is going to do that? It's just insane. Which is what I mean, like I said, fundamental differences, but it's like, oh, go and run. The political system is fried, man. Like, this is what I mean. Do you really think frickin' an actual anti-establishment candidate could get elected? And like he's like, oh, it's not about getting elected, it's about sending a message. What has that ever done? You know, hopeless candidates have been running for ages. Okay? Libertarians always run somebody, right? Has that ever sent a message? And I mean, look, that's sort of what I mean. It's like, but the whole thing is that he's not actually going to give a real plan. Okay, because there isn't a real plan. He just doesn't want shit to hit the fan, because if shit hits the fan, then that would affect him. Okay? He would lose his cushy life. Alright, he might get drafted. He might get arrested for hate speech. You know, he said he's in New York. I doubt that would be very good as a chud YouTuber. And, you know, who knows what else could happen, but like I said, it's just a ridiculous thing. Look, I'll say this. I think the most that could happen is, you sort of win over normies, you know, but that doesn't really matter because normies just go with whichever side they think is stronger or better for them anyway, right? Anyways, though, he's got some other, I don't watch this guy normally, but I just thought that was pretty retarded. It's funny. You know, we already had an anti-establishment candidate. It was Trump. And Trump fucking turned his back on everybody. And of course, it was always obvious from the start. But, you know, that's just always how it is in these situations. There's never been somebody who can actually go against the establishment. Somebody like that could never actually get elected. Alright? Anyways, there's another video about it. I mean, it's the whole thing. The very leftists he's saying that, you know, we need to, you know, work together with are the same ones who would fucking clap if he got assassinated. Whatever, though. Enough about that. I guess we'll watch some of this one. So this is from What If Alt Hiss from a month ago. I guess we'll watch a little bit, but yeah, if you don't know this guy, he made alternate history videos, then political stuff. And he predicted that a civil war was going to start this year, and it never happened. So let's hear what he has to say about it.
Performance, durability.
Most terrifying video.
Okay, let's see.
This is the most terrifying video I've ever made, and I do genuinely mean that. You'll see why. I'm best known for my prediction that America's on the verge of a civil war. I was incorrect in predicting that we'd start seeing mass violence last year. The thing is that the outside world largely mirrored my underlying thesis that America could fall into a civil war on a knife's edge. Both
yes, could.
Right and left-wing pundits have talked about an impending civil war as it became a normal talking point. Practically every major left-wing pundit has openly, or are in the only most thinly veiled way possible, saying that it's acceptable to murder right-wingers for their political opinions. Former presidential...
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, Monsieur Z didn't mention that one. You know, actually, it reminds me, there's a video... When Mom Donnie was elected, some woman said that she was only voting for him so that she would get money from white people. Meanwhile, Monsieur Z thinks that an alliance is possible. Yep, okay, bud.
Candidate Hillary Clinton has said that Republicans should be sent to re-education camps. Leftist think tanks openly shadow... box launching a coup, and there has been mass murders or attacks against either Tesla owners or Doge employees.
It's so funny watching this right after the video, because Monsieur Z is literally saying, yes, we need the alliance. We need to ally with the people who literally hate you, hate us, and want to kill us. Okay, bro.
It used to be that people would mock me for saying that we're on the verge of a civil war. No one does that now. This really then begs the question, why haven't we had a civil war already? I've already made half a dozen videos laying out my argument for why I believe we could have a civil war, so I won't go for that now. I sourced my argument from a variety of historic cycles or computer models, which have historically been proven to be able to predict when societies have revolutions or civil wars. I've been on this for a while where I've thought America would have a civil war since 2020, given I've read a lot of books on the topic that said that. COVID also showed how thin the veil of sanity or societal functioning really is. We've all tried to shove COVID under the rug to forget it happened, but you realistically have to see it as a foreshadowing of what's going to come next.
It's actually kind of interesting. COVID got memory hold even though, the world was shut down for 3 years. It's kind of surreal,
Not to say that we're going to have another plague, although that's not out of the question, but rather how easily the government or your own neighbors can become staggeringly tyrannical or insane if given the slightest excuse. I think I've found the answer for why we haven't had a civil war yet. The horrible thing is the reason is so much vastly worse than what I thought it would be initially. It's similar to how when you turn over a log in the forest, you'll find maggots eating it out. When I studied this topic, the variable that I was missing made everything appear so much worse. Let's not waste any time and get into the thick of it.
Oh, the thick of it! Oh my god. This happens. That's so funny how how many subs does he have? 737,000 and he still has complete dog shit production values. Let me know. You don't need to be a good editor to be a YouTuber.
Part 1, the two crises. I've said for years that I believe the industrial world is facing two distinct crises at once, which have fused into a single event which we're going to have to deal with. The problem is that each of these events have different roots, but they've become inextricably fused. It reminds me of how Strauss and Howe made their generational cycles in the 1990s that predicted that America would hit what they called the fourth turning in the 2020s. This was the first time in American history.
It always has these text dumps. I'm just going to ignore them because it'd take too long to read that.
That their parallel economic and political cycles would crash at once, thus making it the most dangerous era of American history so far. My friend Balaji says that we're currently seeing 4 different cycles of American history converging. Then imperial dynasties tend to last 250 years, as best articulated by Peter Turchin recently, but with authors going back centuries ago like Tytler also saying it. This is the year America turns exactly 250 years old, which is pretty spooky. If you want to get a little more woo-woo, we're currently in the shift of astrological ages from the age of Pisces to Aquarius.
Keeping the charm with the dog shit editing. Honestly, it does give him some personality,
The ancients put enormous stock into stuff like that. It's difficult to be able to try to explain to people why they should articulate 2 separate lines of causation in a society where most people want to blame complex events on a single scapegoat. Trying to get the public to talk about things like structural demographic variables or long-term biological processes often feels nigh impossible. But at their core, these are what I believe the causes to be. Those 2 crises are firstly the secular cycle, which authors like Peter Turchin or David Hackett Fisher wrote about. These are 250-year regime shift cycles, with earlier examples in Western history being the French Revolution, the 30 Years' War, or the Black Death. These occur when the world changes while the old ruling class grows corrupt. This then precipitates
Wow. Sound familiar?
It's wars, plagues, and famine as a growing pain before the society can transmute from older to newer forms. Meanwhile, the second crisis is Mouse Utopia, or an alternate name I've developed is the Psychological Black Death. I've made a video analyzing Mouse Utopia that you can watch if you want to know more. Mouse Utopia was an experiment run repeatedly in the 60s and 70s.
Talk about the whole Mouse Utopia thing? Oh, he does. Only for a few minutes. I'm just going to skip it. Look, if you don't know what Mass Utopia is at this point, you gotta get a grip, man. Difference is our society is sedated and weak. Yeah, no kidding. Look, if it weren't for frickin' smartphones and, all the fucking... Well, I was going to say all the food, you know, bread and circuses, but the thing that, if anything's going to trigger the Civil War or the revolution or whatever, it's going to be the food getting way too expensive to reasonably afford. Most rebellions happened after food shortages, not necessarily tyranny. You know, that's the thing. That's what I was saying. And look, we're starting to get there. You know, like, if this Iran war, it's very likely going to cause famines, you know, sky-high oil prices, which is going to increase the food cost further. And I mean, look, even if they're, like, it's for sure going to cause some revolutions and civil wars in, you know, the third world, you know, other developing countries. And look, it very well could spread to America, you know? Anyways, let's skip over Mouse Utopia.
Are really
Oh my god. Yeah, give them Uber Eats and Sports Ball and they will not rebel.
The alphas had their harems to protect, and the tunnelers had their hobbies. The end point of Mouse Utopia is
Oh yeah, he's talking about how the only mice that didn't go crazy in Mouse Utopia were the mice who made who made balls of dirt, and the mice who had harems. So only the Chads, and then the autistic incels, basically. The autistic, neat gamer incels.
collapse and atomization, with the mice going crazy due to the overcrowding brought about by the population increase. Mice start hiding and isolating in their own areas to avoid the constant chaos and disorder of the other mice. Once the atomization hits a tipping point, the mice had no way to protect themselves against the gangs of evil murderous mice, where the one thing that could still unify people in the absence of scarcity was envy. It's sad that even the mice can't avoid the Marxists. For those who have had to live through the last few years, the comparisons of Mouse Utopia to our world should be totally obvious and undeniable. I'm not even going to try to go through the obvious comparisons, since I already did that in my previous Mouse Utopia video. I'm trying to avoid this video being a—
You know, it's funny how you have these guys who use stock footage. I mean, come on, just... Actually, maybe that's a good thing. I was going to say just use gameplay footage, like everybody else, but... You know, maybe despite the shit editing, this is what gives him, you know, the professional edge he needs.
rehash of that one, where this is more so a video to catch us up on the recent events. Suffice it to say that probably the easiest examples of similarities are that wokeness, and especially environmentalism, are nearly perfect Mouse Utopia ideologies. That since wokeness is about attacking any group that succeeds, and thus rerouting resources to groups that don't, which will not change the underlying structural reasons for why they did not succeed. The top term for Mouse Utopia is the behavioral sink, and into a that could be reasonable, where if you go to China or India, it's very clear why environmentalism could exist in abstract, but then the logic behind I
actually like the stock footage. Right-wing coalition especially does a good job. I mean, it is nice, but I don't know. Sometimes it feels really performative, you know what I mean? Or, you know, kind of pompous. You know, think before you sleep does it too, so.
Environmentalism can be used to politically push for measures that can end civilization. We can see these trends taking place in North Europe right now, where Germany getting rid of its nuclear power plants and replacing it with coal doesn't make sense inside an environmentalist perspective, but makes total sense from a Mouse Utopia destroying civilization for its own sake perspective.
You know, that's real, okay? Like, wokeness in general... Like, wokeness, the only real goal is just to destroy the society. You know, that's the whole thing. It was never about equality or whatever. And look, if you actually examine wokeness through that lens, it all makes so much sense. Like LGBT, right? You know, that's why they have Drag Queen Story Hour. That's why they have trans kids. You know, because it was never about just giving gay people rights, okay? It was about... you know, actually it was about doing damage to the system itself, you know, grooming these kids into these, you know, self-destructive lifestyles, attacking the family unit, and whatever else.
I heard about how Nantes in France was going to build an airport, and the local environmentalists were trying to shut it down since they were building it on swampland and farms.
They admitted it. Communism will magically work if they destroy society. Yeah, the simple fact that most ideologies pushed The biological dead end should be clear what the goal is. Yeah, no kidding.
Made me think, you understand that that's not valuable pieces of land, right? I want you to get rid of the swamps. What all of this means is that around the world, and not just in the West, due to the global popularity of socialism, the evil envious mice run the
What the hell is third way socialism? Or, I guess, what year is this? Cold War, I guess?
governments. That means that these types of regimes will either actively push for mouse utopia or not be willing to take measures against it. Part 2, what I got wrong. When I predicted that we'd have a revolution or a civil war, I said that these events were completely certain except for one caveat, that being that mouse utopia was so far advanced that society was about to totally collapse anyway. The reason I said that is that from the Civil War or revolutionary analysis, that every variable was already in motion to a degree that you couldn't stop. This is what Peter Turchin said when he predicted a civil war in the mid-2020s, writing around 2010, that you would have to change decades of history leading up to that point, where even in 2010 it was certain. When both sides have rhetoric where they currently are, and the entire government or society divided up, you have an enormous pressure towards conflict without any real pressure towards unity. You need an equivalently large pressure in forces like this to stop these historic trajectories. The thing is that we have something that big, which proved to be even greater than I expected. I don't feel bad for getting my prediction wrong. Looking back on it, I see that I did all of my analysis correctly, but we ended up in the fringe timeline, which I used as a caveat, but I didn't think was likely.
You know, it's still funny how he did get his prediction wrong, but he's, you know, trying to cover for it, you know. Like, I think the logic is sound, but, you know, we'll see.
One of my least favorite, quote, logical games that people do is they pretend whatever does happen is destined to occur while arguing for anything else is insane. I remember when I was a teen and I was watching an alternate history YouTube channel that said that the US could never have conquered Canada in the War of 1812, even though we had 10 times Canada's population at the time. The timeline we are currently in is already staggeringly improbable, where the Industrial Revolution or...
well, look, technically, if you sort of, I don't know, I guess if you believe in determinism, then yeah, but, you know, if you actually look at those events in a vacuum, then, you know, obviously it's not set in stone, right?
Modern technology are improbable in themselves, where the average historic society was basically peasants living in their own filth.
Fleas and ticks? Ick. Prevent the ick.
Dude's getting paid from this. I gotta get ad block on this browser. I use Edge. I use Edge for all my YouTube stuff.
Staggeringly.
But shit. Anyway, why our entire
incorrect
worldview is a lie. You know, this is the thing, okay? I disagree with What If Alt Hist on certain political stuff. The thing is that What If Alt Hist, and I guess Mondier Z too, I describe them as like purple pillars, as in they can kind of you know, they can diagnose a lot of the problems that exist in our society, but they are completely incapable of explaining why those problems exist, and especially how to solve them. Because at their heart, they really are just, you know, liberals. And this is especially true in, you know, What If Alt Hist's case. I'm not as familiar with Monzier Z, but, you know, you see this all the time, right? Like, what's that? Is it Gerbert Johnson or something? Whatever. That guy who does the raps at the start of his video. He does this. He's one of them too.
By any historic standard, and the fact that our shared social beliefs are this incorrect already doesn't really make any sense, since 99.9% of human societies in history would say that the things we believe as a society are just completely insane. Doing these sorts of predictions are profoundly difficult, since I have to model how the entire world works, given the way these things operate is that a litany of different variables can change the trajectory, not just the variables you're measuring or are aware of. This is why technocracy and social engineering always fails on such a staggering level. These are often driven by unpredictable variables. In many cases, the thing that changes the equation you're looking at is what Nassim Taleb calls black swans, which are unpredictable variables that ironically occur.
Predictions you got correct. Mouse utopia, civilizational decline, suicide of the West. I mean, this was all basically happening. Rise of incel politics, the right being unable to form a coalition distinct from the left, internal crises in Europe, China becoming totalitarian. What? Wasn't China always totalitarian? The elite being pedos. Okay, what rock have you been living under? The exact week Russia invaded Ukraine. Yo, he must have that, like, printed out and framed on his fridge, or, like, framed on his wall. Magneted to his fridge. The birth rate collapsing to 0. I mean, it's not there yet. The left going completely insane. The far right backlash. Great Depression for normal people. I don't know. I feel like half of these you can't even describe as predictions.
With relative statistical frequency. This is why
the Gerber guy got such a baffling explosion on YouTube. I remember when he used to get only mere thousands on his vids, and he was pretty much memeing, but now it's all serious. I mean, yeah. I don't know. I guess guys like him just have a lot of mass appeal, you know what I mean? You know, most, you know, like, average young men, they don't want to listen to Giga Chud, right? They want to listen to someone, you know, more relatable or more reasonable or whatever, right? Even if that person doesn't actually provide real solutions. I don't know. The thing that bothers me with Gerbert is that he made a video saying that the, you know, the male loneliness epidemic was fake, and then a year later he just he admits that it was real. And it's like, you know, it was always obviously real, you know, but he was just, you know, touting the fucking normie bullshit, you know. But, you know, he was touting he was fucking believing all the normie lies until it literally became indisputable until it became indisputable, right? Half of this is obvious stuff. That's the thing, you know? So, I wouldn't exactly say that he's the fucking next Nostradamus or something.
I say that my job is betting against God, and I don't fault myself.
And he doesn't win very often.
For getting this stuff wrong. I challenge any of my critics to get a better predictive record than me, and here's a text wall of all the predictions I got right. It's better to have a culture where we encourage people to take risks than one where we just hide in the corner. Also, my attitude towards these things is that I change my worldview every year with new information, and my worldview is an open source code, which I'm constantly testing or feeding new inputs into. What happened here is that a handful of variables I wasn't tracking crystallized to make Mouse Utopia vastly worse than I expected initially. Mouse Utopia, over the last few years, was able to radically surge in importance. We're still going to have a civil war, in my opinion. It's just that Mouse Utopia is going to become the dominant variable around the world soon. It's similar to how the Black Death during the crisis of the 14th century became the most important event around the world, but you still have political crises like the 100 Years' War or the fall of Mongol China occurring at the same time as the Black Death.
Man, you know, the Black Death is kind of interesting. Because, you know, people are all like, you know, civil war, whatever, it would be so bad. You know, crises can actually be oftentimes very good for the survivors. In the case of the Black Death, it killed about 1/3 of Europe's population. However, it also significantly, you know, decreased competition for labor, you know, increased demand. So it actually greatly improved the living conditions for the average European because, you know, lords, property owners, they had to offer much better wages. It also, you know, led to having, you know, better hygiene standards, for example. So, yeah, similar thing would happen in, like, a civil war scenario. Or even if there was an actual, like, you know, an actual pandemic, you know, same kind of thing, you know. Sucks in the short term, terrible for those who die, but, you know, ultimately, humanity benefits, the survivors benefit. Sounds like this guy is an incel living in an echo chamber. Look, I mean, whether or not he's an incel is a bit debatable. I personally would say, I would say yeah, but look, we'll see him later.
Mouse Utopia has grown so rapidly that it's
problem is that we have a bigger problem that they didn't have at the time, mass migration. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like, mass immigration is the real issue, you know? Because any other problem can be solved given a long enough timeline except mass immigration. Because mass immigration, you know, it's literally done to replace the native peoples. And if the native peoples go extinct or, you know, even become a minority, it's very difficult to, you know, go back from that. You know, basically, maybe even impossible, right?
Eating literally every other variable in the society, and it will soon kill all of us.
And like, I won't say it's always impossible. Like the Reconquista, for example, happened, but yeah.
If we can't change direction. We're stuck in a uniquely weird position as a society due to the internet, screen addiction, the baby boomers, and feminism or wokeness that allows us to get to the edge of a civil war, but then not actually cause one. Then what happens is that mouse utopia becomes the main instigating variable, which allows a civil war-like conflict to emerge. I will unpack how the timeline we're currently in was practically designed by God to make the society involved look as pathetic as possible. As I said in my recent video on my second YouTube channel, History 102, with my video on the Age of the Last Men, Nietzsche predicted that this would occur in the
Nietzsche spoke of this
19th century. He said that the society of the 21st century would be so horrifyingly complacent, nihilistic, envious, and pathetic as to become a benchmark for thousands of years for what we should avoid as a species. That is where we're stuck now. The good thing is that Nietzsche predicted that the last men would lose and that their society would collapse. Screen addiction is an enormous variable here which creeped in on us at the exact worst moment. It's hard to overstate how negative the consequences of screen addiction are.
Mouse Utopia will not happen because the third world exists. I mean, I guess, right? I don't know. Well, look, if this hantavirus pops off, then, like, half the third world will die. Which will be pretty based. But, or actually, isn't there a new Ebola strain? We'll have to see.
Over a year trying to decenter myself from the internet, and I've been largely successful. I've developed my own system to manage screen addiction, which I'll make a video on this channel explaining soon. However, what I learned in the process is that screen addiction has consumed nearly everyone, while it's not really an option anymore. Screen addiction is practically mandatory now if you want to be a member of society. The trick the society does, where they'll give you a bad social product, like bad quality food, politics, or school, and say that if you don't like it, you can go somewhere else, is horrible, since the industrial system is so centralized that there really isn't another option, so you're just stuck with their bad quality product.
Yeah, basically true.
That they're totally unwilling to take responsibility for. One of the worst elements of mouse utopia is the atomization. The mice die when they become totally isolated and atomized. What screen addiction has done is radically increase the negative effects of atomization for obvious reasons. The screens are designed to keep us constantly hooked on very short-term stimuli. Almost no human can compete with that on a lizard brain level, since real relationships are complex and often slow or messy.
Well, look, and also feminism, for example, really compounds the issue if we're talking dating specifically. Like, to bring in, like, the AI girlfriend thing, like, once, because, women are basically the word, like, hoflation is real, women, they're rude, they're bitchy, they're promiscuous, they can't cook, they don't want to clean, all right? They don't even want to date you, even if you're, if you're as attractive as them, as successful or more successful. They only want the top guys, all right? So, if a young man is presented with literally the worst female one of the worst female specimens in history, then can you really blame him for, say, watching porn or talking to a chatbot or whatever? For Mouse Utopia to happen, you need, a utopia and people being idle with no purpose besides eating and fucking like the cage of the Mouse Utopia. I mean, well, look, the whole thing with Mouse Utopia is that they effectively gave all the mice, what they needed for survival for free. And I mean, in our society, it's kind of similar, but I mean, you still need to work and everything. It's more about the principle, right? But
relationships feel hollow and don't provide the same role on a physiological animal basis. Humans need deep relationships in order to be able to live at all, and we legitimately, on a medical basis, have severe health effects for not having them. Loneliness cuts off...
Chronic loneliness and social isolation are as harmful to health as smoking up to 15 cigarettes a day. Damn. By 26%, jeez.
As many years of your life as smoking cigarettes does. Another element of the mouse...
Actually, fuck. I'm just thinking, wow. We gotta start applying, like, the liberal logic to our problems, okay? Okay, you know how liberals will be like, if you don't give a trans kid a surgery, then you're perpetuating their murder because they're gonna it's murder because they're gonna kill themselves. We gotta be like, because male loneliness is as deadly as smoking cigarettes, then women have to have sex with us or else they're committing murder. That's so funny. We need government mandated prostitution and girlfriends to solve the male loneliness epidemic because its murder results in premature death as dangerous as smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Utopia atomization with screen addiction is that you have to see screen addiction as like abusing a drug, in that it puts people into an altered psychological state which you can't compare to a normal sober person. As I've said before, I'm going to make a video on this topic soon, but it's hard to overestimate how much the internet is coloring society today. I only realized this as I tried to distance myself from screen addiction, and then it started changing how I thought, where I started to remember and revert back to the version of myself I was as a child before I had the internet. This addiction is true even for baby boomers and older people who are still addicted to their screens. Everyone is so...
Yeah, it's real. Boomers always bitch about the phones, but they're honestly probably the most phone addicted. Anyways. Will not work because no one cares about male loneliness. Yeah, exactly, right? But I mean, it's funny to think about at least.
Addicted to their screens that they don't even realize how much it's affecting them already. The reason I say that is that all of the social or political trends today are downstream from the internet. The cable news stations still hold the legitimacy and the money, but the real cultural shifts or innovation stem from the internet. Every single major trend or event today is internet provoked because people are legitimately not going outside enough to spark trends in the real material reality. People will tell me to touch grass, and I'm sure I spend much more time in nature on a more frequent basis than any of these people, but there is no actual physical place to do things anymore.
That's real, actually. Like, people say, go outside, so it's actually pretty hard. Like, I remember I checked out this, someone told me about this website where you're supposed to, like, schedule, like, IRL meetups or whatever. I go there, and there's, like, literally nothing even going on, And I was looking at, like, some pretty general topics, like video game. Like, there wasn't even any video game stuff. All right, what the hell?
Young people want to form political groups, and I'm very active in the Texas right-wing youth scene. There aren't really many options to do so. There's no third places for young people to meet or hang out. The only thing that I've found...
Yeah, exactly. All the IRL meetup spots died because of the internet, I guess, so it's basically impossible,
works is using the internet to organize people to meet up in person. I'm so angry that everyone is addicted to screens, and we're so complacent that we don't even really talk about it. There's no social institutions to help deal with screen addiction. There's no recognition that this is an issue, or social codes to help people be less addicted to their screens. It only makes sense if we're in the age of the last men. The only people I really see who talk about screen addiction are those who work in the tech industry, who see how the sausage gets made enough that they know about the negative consequences. I think we should all do our bit to lessen the addiction, but I'm also aware that lots of people, myself included, are dependent on work that requires using a screen, while every other vector of life has become...
Evolution is working. Those that adapt to the internet age will survive. Those that don't will die. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Look, I mean, I wouldn't really say, it's technically evolution, but I don't like framing it that way because it's like, oh man, whoever is going to survive these very unnatural conditions. It's just natural selection to survive the most unnatural conditions that ever existed, but
mediated by screens, whether social, personal, entertainment, or even sexual. I think if screen addiction somehow vanished as a variable tomorrow, that we'd have a civil war. That's since what the internet algorithms and addictions do is hook people up to these giant egregores, which is a term for a collective group spirit, that are radically conformist. The reason that the internet these days is so sterile and boring is that since everyone's online, no one is having experiences outside which they could bring to the internet.
Look, that's a part of it, but the real reason why the internet became super sterile is because, the big companies started censoring stuff more. And look, the whole thing is all the normies got on the internet, and normies like boring shit. And also, you know, the internet back in the old days, it was spread across, you know, many different sites. But nowadays, it's all just the big ones, you know, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. Like, when was the last time you went to another site to, you know, post memes or, you know, like, who the hell goes to forum sites anymore, right? I mean, it's pretty rare.
To be genuinely entertaining, the only thing people talk about are either things that are online, or in person they'll talk about those internet trends, and none of this has any relationship to reality. All of this evolves into becoming some fourth-level abstracted simulacrum of life. The digital culture also prizes conformity, insincerity, envy, and cruelty.
Play 10 all-new games, including John Wick.
This guy better be getting... This guy's getting paid from all these ads. Damn. And it's always the double ad. Fucking bullshit.
Psychological drives in their own right, and since people don't have lives outside their screens, then the biases implicit in these algorithms just become the new reality. People don't have enough objectivity to know how addicted they already are. At the same time, the screens suck up every extra moment, so they have no mental energy or time to think objectively to realize what's going on. This means it's impossible to organize people, since the internet attacks anyone who is sincere.
I do, because most of what I like is being banned from social media because the far left and far right authoritarianism, yeah. I mean, exactly, but I mean, you know, look at YouTube, right? If you look at YouTube alternatives, it's what, Rumble, Odyssey, and those just exist because, you know, of people who got banned from YouTube for political reasons. It's not like you have any creators, you know, it's not like you have anything else on there, right?
And trying to fix things. The internet is so toxic and envious that it traps everyone in these low-trust games where nothing gets accomplished, but at the same time it uses psychological manipulation and constant dopamine to stop people from taking a step back and putting all the pieces together. The reason that all the presidential candidates for 2028 are reruns of older ones, while there are no new candidates which represent the changing society, is that the internet destroys anyone who tries to form genuine leadership. The internet has chewed up practically all of its formerly loved pundits, such as Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, Ben Shapiro, Destiny, Vaush, or Hassan.
Well, look, it's not like it's completely unwarranted, but I mean, I guess I get what he's saying.
The only reason I'm still around is I actively avoid you and everything you say. I literally do whatever the opposite of what the internet mob tells me to do, and it works quite well. When I realized that most of the internet would cheer on my death, it radically changed how I perceive this entire equation. This all adds together to keep the entire population entranced in a drug-induced spiral with no release or way to organize. The average digital person is stuck being constantly stimulated.
I miss when Jordan Peterson was the internet's reluctant dad. I mean, I was never really a Jordan Peterson fan. And I mean, look, in retrospect, I don't know, he's another one of these kinds of guys, right? You know, one of these, you know, purple pillars, you know, true liberal at heart, right? I don't know, I don't really regret losing him, I'll say that much. It's not the collective internet. I mean, yeah, I guess that too.
With no resolution or depth. They feel constantly disassociated and as if they're living in a dreamlike state where nothing feels real. The way the digital mob works is that they're incentivized to leave.
Well, you know, if the US government actually broke the Google monopoly instead of embracing it and championing it, we would probably have more alternatives. I mean, yeah. But, you know, that shit's never gonna happen. Are you kidding me, man?
Lead people to the point of violence, but have no ability to organize it. That's why these...
Peterson was always a shill. He had collections with the beaks. Yeah. He literally identifies as a classical liberal, but that's essentially just another way to say conservative. Look, I guess, but he was never actually right-wing. You know, he attacked parts of third-wave feminism, but I mean, he was still a first-wave and a second-wave feminist. He was against sort of group identity, you know, especially white people creating some kind of group solidarity. He was basically just another, you know, controlled opposition case. And I mean, I'll say this much, I do think some of his content was pretty good, but, you know, definitely don't think he was the leader of the right or whatever.
Pundits keep on saying it's okay to kill people, but then the murders are caused by lone gunmen, since the internet has radically made the mouse utopia atomization worse. The second element here that I didn't model...
He's easily the most powerful and intellectual force the right adjacent sphere has, though. I would say was. The whole thing is that he's just totally washed up now, you know? I mean, if he released another book tomorrow, do you really think it would be as big as his, first book? I think it was 10 Rules for Life, right? And, I mean, I guess he doesn't have that much competition, but that's what I mean. I mean, he's washed up. So maybe you could say that, but I don't know. And even then, I mean, calling him intellectual these days, I think that's a little too generous. He's definitely fallen off. Yeah, 12 Rules for Life, that's it.
Correctly was how well wokeness would work, even among the right. I can see that the right was...
I don't know. He lost it after he got that neurism, yeah. I don't know. It's kind of hard to even have an actual intellectual force, though. Because, just the way modern politics and meme culture, it's just very, it's kind of anti-intellectual, you know what I mean?
Pushing back against the left in the last few years. Elon buying Twitter was really a tipping point here. However, what I've found is that the new right is by and large similar to the left in general psychology.
Yeah, here it is. I guess he's one of these woke right people. We are in a reality war. Left versus right are fundamentally different religions with different views of reality, yeah.
It's also important to say that the left comes with all of these implicit assumptions like equality or consensus or these very feminine mindsets that would not exist in another era.
I mean, I kind of disagree with some of this. I mean, what?
Of history and make mouse utopia more difficult to deal with because all of those things push towards the behavior.
Yeah, intellectuals are a minority anyway. Look, I do think for a real political movement, you do kind of need it. But yeah, that's the whole thing. We don't really have a real political movement on the right. And look, it'd be good to have one, but we just don't.
Sync. I want to make this video a sort of skeleton key for the next series of videos I'm making, where I also need to make a video on the new right with its core issues. The right has proven itself to be profoundly pathetic in a way that I didn't think was even possible. I was operating under the assumption that the right would start to process the left as an existential threat once Trump was elected, since they clearly are. You could look to Europe, the other Anglo diasporas like Canada or Australia, as well as even Brazil or the rest of the world, to see that if the left is allowed even a little bit more power, they will jail their opposition and crack down on the right, carrying out the demographic suicide of the Western world. We see these trends.
Rome fell because it became globalist. I mean, look, Rome basically was like proto-globalist, proto-liberal in a way. Rome in its final days, what did they do? They abandoned their native ethno-religion. Okay, they embraced a universal one instead. They brought in lots of immigrants to do labor and to join the military. Peterson has a legacy that will be remembered in the history books due to the war he waged against BLC 16. This is just eluded by the internet age where everyone falls off eventually. I mean, I guess you could say that. But, I mean, even something like that. I mean, it's probably more of a footnote. Rome fell because it got bloated. I mean, look, that's a part of it, too. I don't know, the whole thing. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into this kind of stuff. Like, I'd have to make a whole video about that.
Even within America, and the right said that when Trump was elected, they were aware of these dangers. Trump was able to form a coalition with RFK and Elon that bridged everyone except the left.
Chewy Pharmacy makes it easy to order pet meds.
Way too many ads.
The runway.
None of these variables held together. Trump is starting Middle Eastern wars while alienating his support base among the right-wing youth, since they voted for him to help on the domestic issues that they're really hurting with, which he has not really helped with. I'm not forgetting all of the positive things Trump has done so...
Yeah, no kidding. And that is why I use Brave, no ads, yeah.
far, and I'm still grateful, but most of the young conservatives I know are turning on the regime. I've heard about plenty who are going to vote for the left, since they hope that the left will just cause total social collapse to speed this up, which I think is a terrible idea. The baby boomers, and this still includes the conservatives, seem totally unwilling to accept the scale of the issues. This is a huge problem, which I could also make into a video, but the boomers are totally willing to ignore the demographic future extinction of their societies, and that's not an exaggeration from the statistics, how the vast majority of Americans live in de facto poverty, how AI is about to get rid of millions of jobs, mass immigration, insane costs of housing, and dozens of other issues. Trump starting a war in the Middle East proves that he thinks that these are issues that can be dealt with by good PR, but they're not.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, he's got to do Israel's bidding. I'm sure there's also an element of him trying to kneecap China. And look, we'll see. I've talked about this in some of my other videos. I think World War III is eventually going to happen for a lot of different reasons. They want to kneecap China, keep America as the top dog, keep the global hegemony. And more importantly, it also takes care of the disenfranchised young man issue. All right, just, too many unemployed young men or, sexless young men who might start a rebellion, just send them overseas to go and die in Iran or China or whatever. Of course, I do think it would backfire, but, I definitely think they would at least try it, and it would help the economy, too. The boomers are all near the death's door. They don't care. Like, that's another part of it, all right? Okay, boomers want to kick the can one last time before they croak.
Are very deep, intractable issues that will totally destroy America within a few years, if not fixed. The clock is already ticking, since if the left gets the presidency once again, they can use it to erode the organic spirit of America enough just to break our will as a nation. A lot of the boomer cons basically have the same worldview as leftists, and it's remarkable how so many boomer conservatives in the Senate will openly not block the left on things like voter ID, not stopping immigration, or not taking wokeness seriously.
That's the thing that's almost surprising when you actually talk to certain boomer conservatives. They actually genuinely are just liberals who are fiscally conservative, I guess.
I think the baby boomers got offered the deal when they were young, that they'd never have to inconvenience themselves in the slightest for the greater good, and they pulled out that promise for the young. When I was growing up, the main messaging was abuse from the left for my skin and genitals, so we never got offered that post-war deal. Now the boomers are trying to pretend that they've always been good, upright Victorians, so they can turn the young into slaves. It's disgusting, and they seem totally...
The real problem is the millennials have the power now and they don't push back. I mean, look, that's the part of it, but, if we're talking politicians specifically, if you can even become an influential politician, you're already vetted, right? So no one in that position is ever you're never going to get somebody in that position who's actually going to go against the system. And if someone does show up there, they'll just, take care of them somehow. You'll definitely never get the volume that you would need to actually make real change.
Willing to let their country die before they even acknowledge what's going on. At the same time, much of the right-wing youth are super feminine. It's disgusting to watch where they engage in all of this victim behavior. This is not a manly or virile way to live. Going back over the last few years, it's really remarkable how much time we've wasted on the Jews.
Okay, that's a different thing. Now, this is a point I really disagree with, okay? He's like, he's one of these guys who's against the kind of victim narratives that, the right tries to. The whole thing that's dumb about this is that victimization is actually a very good motivator, a very good political motivator. All right, it creates group solidarity, and it actually does, like I said, it motivates people to actually, do political movements, actually do a revolution. Like, here, let me think of an example. I mean, look, you can even go back to, the American Revolution is actually a very good example. I mean, do you think that the American founding fathers were feminine when they said no taxation without representation? You have to understand that the average American had a significantly higher standard of living than the average European at the time. Okay? Yet they still decided to chimp out and rebel against their king because of a 3% tax. Are you telling me it's not Are you telling me that wasn't a victimization narrative? But look, it did help motivate people. Okay, it created group solidarity. All right, it worked. Something similar happened with, say, the Nazis prior to, their rise to power. So this is the whole thing. You could say, oh, it's feminine. It doesn't really matter. It's an effective political strategy. And if we actually want to win, we need to use effective political strategies. And it actually is true to an extent. Are you telling me it's not true how we've been screwed over? Anyways, not talking about being a politician. I mean, really doing your part in creating your own stuff and stopping the corruption. I mean, yeah, that's absolutely true. But, yeah.
Going back over the last few years, it's really remarkable how much time we've wasted on the Jews. I understand, especially so with Epstein and the war with Iran, that there are serious questions about Israel's control of the government, but...
Serious questions. You could very well argue that this Iran war is the biggest blunder in American history, and the primary reason it's being done is for the sake of Israel, a tiny country in the Middle East that is just a total nothing burger, that a country that America doesn't even have a military base in. All right? Obviously, Jewish Israeli influence over America is a major problem if America is willing to screw themselves over for Israel's benefit.
None of the discourse over the last few years has been in any way productive or...
Asmongold, Nick Fuentes, everyone on the right is walking back their skepticism on the tiny hat tribe. Yeah, exactly. That's happening too.
Helpful. If we hypothetically killed all of the Jews, it would solve none of the issues I've just mentioned. Even if the Jews created them, which I don't...
Well, look, it would certainly, it would be a start. Look, the whole thing is that if you eliminate the cause, then obviously solving the issues are going to be easier.
Think they did. They've evolved to become variables in their own right that need to be fixed for what they are. Blaming the Marxists would make a lot more sense here.
Blaming the Marxists would make more... Who the fuck do you think the Marxists are? Dumbass? And look, killing all the Marxists wouldn't solve all the issues automatically either. Fuck.
But really, these are issues that need work to fix. They need to be taken seriously, and it's even more gross that there are plenty of young men...
Look, okay, let's put it this way then. Let's say that the Jews caused all the issues, okay, and he was willing to concede on that for the sake of the argument, okay, and let's say we solve all the issues, okay? If we haven't taken care of the Jewish problem, aren't they just gonna cause all the issues to come back? I mean, that's the crazy thing, anyway. The American Revolution only worked because the British Empire didn't care about America. They had Asia and Africa colonies to exploit and the Spanish Navy to deal with. I mean, basically, they didn't really... Yeah, they had bigger fish to fry. But yeah.
And who would be happy to fix them were not all of the young right...
Okay, you've blamed Israel. Great. What do we do next? What do we do next so we don't all fucking... Look, if you actually want to solve the problem, we actually need to identify the cause of the problem. If we acknowledge that Israeli influence over America is a problem, then we can actually start doing something to deal with it. We can demand that politicians, change that policy, push back against Israel, something. All right? If we just say, actually, Israel's not a problem, then, we do nothing, and then we keep spending billions fucking trying to fight Iran or whatever.
Wingmen are this feminine, but they've been blocked from any social mobility by the left. Part of the age of the last men is undercutting anyone with agency or drive, so we can all drown into behavioral sink together. It's insane that the only thing the digital youth right seem to care about is the most obnoxious and...
The cause of the problem is mass immigration and lack of inland industries. Look, I mean, mass immigration is a problem, but the whole thing is mass immigration was done for a very specific reason, okay? It was done to, replace and undercut white people. And it was done so that, big corporations can make more profit and get cheap labor. All right? And look, if you look at the root cause, if you look at the political thinkers or the business owners, you'll see a certain type, the bankers,
retarded status games. They constantly take turns shitting on me, and I am one of the very few people who could actually help them. They're top...
Look, he says that, but, he says he's reinventing his political opinions every year, so who fucking knows what he believes now, but You know, this guy, as when I watched him, he was always a classical liberal, you know, believes in first wave feminism, you know, anti-racist, anti-nationalist, still thinks Hitler was the most evil guy to ever exist unequivocally.
Criticisms of me are that I'm ugly, autistic, and a loser who's not right-wing enough.
So he's not right-wing enough, all right? And ugly, we'll see about that. Autistic and a loser. I mean, look. Keep in mind, by the way, let's look at this.
Another example of the kind of guy my dad is that he...
Let's see here. Let's skip ahead.
My mom was a horse lady, and she also taught me how to ride. I was a pretty good horseman as a kid, and my mom said it's important because horseback riding teaches you leadership, because most leadership is implicit through body language and how you carry yourself, which is how horses communicate. And she said, quote, deal with a horse as you would deal with a woman or a crowd.
Everyone knows what the root of the issue is, but no one will do anything with it. Yeah, exactly.
They are emotional prey animals.
Look, he definitely ain't turning heads, I'll say that much.
My school was mostly gay and Chinese people. Back to the story. So, it was past midnight, I couldn't sleep,
Where's
and
the
I was
part where we
thinking
talk
of the
about
first
Odin?
step of killing myself, which is cutting my arm. And I had a big kitchen knife in my dad's house. I put the knife up against my arm, I thought, wait, Rudyard.
Oh my god.
If you have... Rudyard is a gift from God. Odin intervened in the game, and he said, hey kid, if you write a list of every girl you masturbate to, I will solve every issue in your life. I feel like we've built up enough connection after 6 hours that I can share stuff like this with you, and you've seen so much worse so far in this story. This is nothing compared to some of the earlier stuff with my mom. I thought it was...
So he really is a liberal, yeah. His manner of speech is worse than his face. Why do they all talk like this? Look, he's an autistic nerd who makes videos on the internet. I mean, this is just how it is.
It's kind of weird when Odin said it, but he had healed my PTSD, so I'll do what he says. You don't understand how much I love God, both Yahweh and Odin, for healing my PTSD. You cannot understand my motivational system here.
Yeah, so this is the guy. Okay, this guy is an authority. He knows what's best for America, for the young right-wing men. You can certainly trust him as a leader of the movement or something. What the heck's this? Oh, he got a suit for this.
My message can be concentrated into this one...
Also an agnostic. I mean, this is like Christian shit. Like, you know how Christian thinks all the gods are real?
Sentence. I stand so that men won't be cattle. A man cannot be treated as a cow, and for that to happen is a mortal sin. Although I do not support violence, I will die for this cause. I stand
oh my gosh.
So that other men can stand. I have suffered to tell you that you are not weak. You don't need the managers. If I can be strong, so can you. I have set you free. You no longer need a master, and you are a free man. Another thing, how you...
Okay, this is just embarrassing, man. Okay, if you're gonna do an inspiring speech, at least slam your fist down like you fucking mean it! Jesus!
You treat animals in the forest as unforgivable.
So it's terminally online losers pretending they know how everything works even though they never experienced it. Are you agnostic? Are you asking me? I guess you just say I'm non-religious. Look, I'll say this much. You know, God certainly could be real, but you know, I'm not religious or anything like that.
Forgivable. Keep in mind how you treat others is reflected in yourself. When we put animals into factory farming, you were creating a society that would eventually try to do the same to its own people.
I mean, that might be a little much, but...
As the animal lord, I'm going to call myself the deer lord, but this is a pretty cute beaver. I stand for the other deer of the forest. We do not honor the forest, and thus we rape the land constantly. The forest and the animals would like some respect. You really should ban factory farming, and you should eat meat, but you should make sure the animals live happy lives where they feel loved. The animals in the forest love you so much. Why don't you love them back? Look at the cute beaver. Do you want...
Okay, I'm not sure if the animals in the forest love me. That's a bit of a stretch. Who's this schmuck? It's what if alt hissed? See, what does this guy know about farming or hunting? Nothing. Look, I mean, I don't believe in animal cruelty, but, you know, there's a limit. Look, I mean, look, we gotta eat animals to survive, okay? Nature's basically just a battle royale anyway, so.
Hurt the cute beaver. Your ancestors have been so mean to the beavers. You killed them. You wiped out all the beavers in North America and Europe. You should help. Or the beavers have kind of survived. I saw some beavers in Pennsylvania, but the beavers used to.
Most animals don't even love their own children. Yeah, no kidding. Hamsters will fucking eat their babies.
Be nigh extinct. You should help the beavers reproduce. The beavers build beautiful dams. Thank you, Mr. Beaver.
Oh, okay, this is gonna be good.
I killed your god. If you are excellent, the tree will innately protect you. It was going to avoid its defense of Western civilization.
Nature is all animals and plants trying to mass extinct each other. That's why it's so goofy when someone has, like, this Disney princess version of nature. I mean, nature's freaking brutal, man.
Until this young man showed up. You haven't realized it yet, but this young man already saved you. You don't have to worry anymore. He's here to protect you and take care of you. You already won. You don't have to worry. Everything is going to be fine. Rudyard will protect trying to move you up the great chain of being, and he will protect thinkers, adventurers, mystics, the great, the glorious, and others. We will protect as much as we can those trying to help evolution move forward. Your age has been so cruel to them, and it's painful for us to watch.
So this dude has a freaking messiah complex or something. Bro, if you want to be the leader of the right, then look, I don't think you got it. Okay, maybe you can be Goebbels or something. All right, but Hitler, okay, that role is taken, okay? I'm not sure by who, but it's reserved.
Rudyard has an incredibly rare genetic gift, which he cutely calls the radio tower. Rudyard has projected his psychic gifts onto others, in which most mystics can only channel one god or another. Rudyard has an ability to channel the near whole spirit world. We know you humans are about to hit some scary times, so Rudyard is our gift to you. He is the spirit world's equivalent of Wikipedia.
This guy actually does think he's the Messiah or something. This is an actual god complex.
Which is here to explain to you how the spirit world works. Please enjoy him responsibly. Let me drink another cup of kratom. God, I might need more CBD.
He's got this goofy-ass octopus mug. Yeah, this is the craze you find on the back of BitChute. The crazy is this isn't even a live, this wasn't even a live stream or something where it was all, he recorded this and then uploaded it, like, to his actual YouTube channel. So, what the hell?
You know, you guys can go fuck yourselves, right?
He's got a bathrobe on. Narcissism, yeah. Okay.
You know, I'm not crazy, because if a sane person lived through what I just showed you, this would be their reaction. It would break a crazy person. I am here showing you how beautiful my octopus mug is.
Yeah, your octopus mug is awesome, bro.
I am a sorcerer, and sorcerers and witches hate each other, because we're very different, and you might not realize that. Ironically, I am a white magician who practices right-hand magic. And so I am a white right-wing magician. So it was pretty obvious the left was evil, because left is the Latin word sinister, or untrustworthy, and left-hand magic was magic built off taking from others, and it's left hemisphere power-based magic where you have to siphon energy off from others. And then white-handed magic is magic that helps people grow. And I am a white magician because my energy comes from you having positive experiences. I can feed off your energy, and thus for strategic reasons, I need to make sure you have good vibes so I can feed off them to make me better off. And
the vibe? What?
Right-hand magic, magic that comes from God. Left-hand magic, magic that comes from the devil.
Doesn't the Bible condemn all magic?
And witches practice left-hand magic. There are some female sorcerers, but I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about witches. And there are some male witches. And then sorcerers. Some sorcerers are good, some are bad. I haven't studied this topic that much. I've only read like 40 books on it. I need to read.
I've only read 40 books, but then how are you even a magician, bro?
2 to 3 times that much to truly understand it. But so the white magic is similar, where white magic is magic that serves God, and it recharges by goodness and letting go, which is why Christ lets us go.
Yes, the Bible condemns all magic. That is not God's miracle. Yeah, no kidding.
Because only by letting us have free will can God truly take pride in our success, because he knows we did it. In the same manner, a mother and a father must let go of their children to be free. And the left hand, they want to control you, so to siphon off their energy. I am setting you free. Do you understand? Before I get going,
he whips out the fedora.
Gotta drop some messages for you. First is that hats are out of fashion in your era of history, and I see that as an unfortunate thing because they're so cool. You can have a nice hat. I think I rock this fedora, and
You're not rocking it, bro. Does it even fit properly? I think.
Purposely wearing a fedora to mog the haters. You can mock me now. I dare you. I dare you to mock me for wearing a fedora. You can go ahead. What's that monolith? The one in DC. I forget its name. Yeah, that's an erect penis. Arthur.
Oh my god, no, what the hell?
Arthur C. Clarke wrote a book called 2001: A Space Odyssey. And it said that in the year 2001, there would be a breakthrough in how humans processed consciousness relating to stuff like AI and space and new technologies. So I guess he was right. I was born in 2001. If society is my girlfriend, the message I would convey to you is, I don't actually like you, and we need some space.
Oh my god! Okay, that's actually really funny. that's funny. If society... Okay.
Here we go. I state before the Lord God and Hermes that I now have sealed the contract in the Blue Room. You have my official guarantor in front of the public and my official signing that my contract is now closed. I am officially a public servant of the Blue Room. Done.
Wait, what? The fuck's the Blue Room?
Oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god, oh god. And so I've seen so much.
What a larper. No, this is just some old school schizophrenia, man. He tried to claim after the fact that it was a social experiment, but freaking no way. There's no way there's no way he made this shit up.
I've done so many things to figure out who I am, because I always wondered who that was. And I now know that I have the answer. I am Rudyard William Lynch, the man who killed a god.
Bro. Fuck. What was the god he killed? Oh, well, okay, that was quite, the ordeal. Did we skip over anything cool? I don't think so.
And executing is it's so hype. Your society is so cognitively a woman that we literally sent you a charming, handsome, 6'4", cook, adventurer, celebrity young man to teach your society wisdom. And his audience is still 96% male, so you're still not grateful as a female society. We normally send some short old guy who wanders around. Rudyard is a gift from God. Odin...
Bro, Rudyard is a gift from God. Well, I think it's time to end the stream. Yeah, I think that's about it for today. I mean, who even cares about the rest of this? I mean, it can't be that interesting. Civil War, you know, whatever. I forgot about how crazy this guy actually was. High-ranking Yakubian displays advanced technology technique. Sit and listen. A black woman is speaking. Man. Fuck. It's crazy. He still has his career, too. He just deleted it. I guess everybody's forgot about it by now. But, you know, whatever. It's definitely funny, but... You know, in short, not a fan of this guy. He is literally just he is also schizophrenic. So, definitely not qualified to be a leader of the right. Yeah, I'm sure this guy is crowned enough to predict a civil war and should be listened to. Yeah, well... You know, sometimes you gotta be a little crazy, right? He is forever being memory hold. Yeah, my god. I don't know. The crazy thing is, why did he even upload this? I mean, he hasn't had any schizo breakdowns since then. And, you know, it wasn't even a live stream. If it was a live stream, I could give him a pass. Like, okay, maybe he went a little off the rails. But no, it was a video he recorded and uploaded. So he was, you know, he was 100% certain that he wanted to show this off to the entire world. And then when people criticized him, because of course they did, he, you know, bitches out, deletes everything, and is like, actually, no, it was all the social experiment. Sure, buddy, sure. Yeah, but that's about it, though. Let's see, let's check out. Let's see. Check out some of the top commenters. Yeah, thank you. Oh, wait. Let me make this bigger. Oh, it cuts off the name anyway. Whatever. Thank you, Kira Support, Mr. Knight, Justin Nix, Kanye 2028, Agao, and Yokai. Alright, and everyone else I haven't mentioned too. Locale is going to Locale, yeah. Weirdly enough, I mean, I guess he's not really a lolcow anymore. Because he doesn't really do that anymore. Because he hasn't had another moment like this. So, I mean, we'll see. But anyways, that's about it for today's stream. Like the stream if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more content in the future. Alright. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Kai Marin. And...